Call to order the Monday, August 24th, Board of Appeals. First item of business, adoption of the minutes from the July 27th, 2020 meeting. All in favor? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? So it's, all in favor? All opposed? We're adopted. Old business. New business. I'm gonna take Michael Johnson and Mallory Betts' application first. I think it should take less time. Is there anybody here opposing the variance request? For the record, I received emails from Lori with some question and comments from a Beatrice Romer. I want that part of this record. And as far as you go, your application is in. And you are, Stephen?
Oh, I'm Michael Johnson.
Michael Johnson, and you are?
Mallory.
Mallory. Hi.
Hi.
What we're gonna do is, you wanna come right up here? Who wants to talk for both of you? You wanna raise your right hand and repeat after me? You promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so in the cause now and hearing.
Yes, sir.
Come right up.
There's also one from Laura Nason.
Oh, there's also something from Laura Mason.
Nason.
Mason?
With
We'll
an
make
N.
that part of the record. Okay. Tell us what you want and why.
All right, well, we act as medical marijuana caregivers, and we help a wide variety of patients. And with the new laws that have changed that do not allow patients designation cards to provide to a caregiver or a dispensary, we want to be able to take the next step to be able to provide quality and cheaper flower concentrates to patients as we believe they rightfully deserve. So according to my talks with the code enforcement officers, it was Lori and another gentleman at one point in time, allowed to operate a storefront on your own property. And the issues that we have found with some of the variances, especially only limiting us to 6 customers per day or 6 patients a day, seems to be very restrictive on the success of the medical marijuana program, especially caregivers. And then also with the fact that we went from an essential business as far as the state of Maine is concerned, helping keeping patients safe from not having to travel to get their medicine or find medicine for them. So we're trying to seek a variance to allow us to operate in a professional manner and, in other words, set the standard in the industry and be able to continue to help in the town of Ellsworth rather than having to go to another town like Bangor and so on.
All right, tell me, is this in the shoreline zone?
It's in the DW zone.
So the shoreline zone does not apply, correct?
No, it would not.
Tell me why the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless the variance is granted.
Well, we know we're allowed to cultivate in the property, and if we wanted, we could have an extraction facility, which costs them a large sum of money. Let's take a guess, $500,000. If I'm to buy this property in question and to actually be able to afford to make an honest living, we need to be able to have that variance granted so we could be able to help as many patients as we can.
Do you own it now?
No, we do not. Now, when it comes to the looking into it, so I make sure at Mallory that we do not spend $240,000 and not be able to use the property to its full potential. It's protecting my finances and the company's.
Okay, tell me why the need for the variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property and not to the general conditions of the neighborhood.
I guess I don't know how to answer this properly, so I'll do the best I can. To be able to, I don't think that, it's not like we're trying to build a dispensary or a storefront in town Ellsworth. It's located in more of a rural community on the outskirts of town. And I don't think that it would be able, I don't think the presence of a cannabis store there would affect the overall well-being of the town.
This is where that It's on the long stretch there, it's on the left going towards
Used to be the
Bangor.
old toy maker shop.
Toy maker, and before that it was a computer shop.
Yep.
And before that it was Branch Pond Marine years ago, and before
Stove
that,
shop.
Northwind Stove
stove
Shop.
shop, and it's commercial retail.
Yep.
Always has been commercial retail. And
It's-
they've always had more than 6 or more customers a day.
Yep, because we tried for a really long time to find a piece of property that we could cultivate in, also live in, and be able to have the opportunity to have a storefront. Because in order for us to buy a piece of property and build on it, would set us back many years.
Tell me why the granting of the variance will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood.
Well, since it's in a rural area, we also stated in a letter that we submitted that, if the town does not want us to have a sign, we won't have a sign. Essentially, nothing will change. There's ways of odor elimination that we could do for the grow room, which would not happen over a period of a few years. But the grow room itself, there's ways that we can make it odor-free at our expense that no one else would actually know or smell.
But your variance really is in selling product to people that come there, right?
For the most part, yes, but we want to get back into cultivating, which helps offset our costs legally. As far as the state of Maine is concerned, we're allowed to wholesale up to 75% of our products. So like companies down from southern Maine help us, we would like to, in return, help other medical marijuana caregivers or companies be able to help them succeed as well.
Tell me why the hardship is not the result of action taken by you or prior owners.
I don't know how to explain.
Dwight, this
Yeah.
variance, what do you
Yeah.
know about it? What do you know about the zoning out there?
Well, it is a DW, so it's an allowed use under home occupations. I want to clarify 2 things though. City of Ellsworth has then opted in, has not opted in. So you cannot have a retail store that sells to anyone that's set up in your medical caregiver area right now. And I don't know if you can have a commercial grow site either.
Well, I'll correct you there. Commercial grows, we are not applying for a tier 1 or anything like that. We know that there's a prohibition on recreational cannabis, which is nothing that we can do besides our legal limit,
Okay,
which is not commercial.
you have 500 square feet of canopy of mature plants and your juvenile plants and your cedar.
If we choose to go by canopy size.
Right,
So we could grow either our legal amount of plants,
yeah.
or we could go by canopy size, which would limit the amount of plants per square footage.
Yes, okay.
So if
Yeah.
let me ask you, if this is granted, can he do it? Or has he got 17 more hurdles to go through?
No, if he stays under the guidelines of the medical marijuana program, no. Now, the city may look at this in the future. We've been held back because we didn't know where the state was going. I still don't know if the state's gonna change things as they go.
Yep.
We didn't want someone coming into town and starting this big operation and then have it shut down halfway through because we decided not to opt in.
Right.
So we always make that clear. You still have to fall under all the guidelines of the medical marijuana program.
Yep.
Okay.
I
When
know.
will people know the 400 other regulations that are coming?
I don't know, and I don't know. And the problem is, we put this together quite quickly. And the guidelines in there for not having more than 25% of the floor space of the building was part of the old home occupation rule. Well, if if you're allowed to have 500 square feet of canopy, you'd have to have a 2,000 square foot home with a footprint of 2,000 square feet to be able to do it. So, it's something we know the problems we have with the ordinance. We're gonna try to address them as soon as we have a new plan now, as soon as we can, but.
Well, let me ask you, can we grant a variance to a guy that's not an owner?
He does have a letter from John Phillips in his packet.
So Phillips is,
Oh, he's on board, yeah,
so
yeah.
Phillips wants to sell this with the ordinance. I mean,
Right.
I've known John Phillips for 50 years.
Yeah, we told
Is
John
that,
he had.
anybody got a problem with me
No,
with that issue?
we all know John.
All right, well,
I think I know him.
okay, well, if anyone's got a problem, there's nobody, well, I just wanna make sure that everyone knows I've known John forever.
Yeah,
Dwight, is this use allowed anywhere in town?
it's allowed everywhere in town if you can meet those guidelines.
Of a home occupation?
Right.
Okay.
As a home occupation, yeah, yeah.
But the amount, really it comes down to how much space you need to grow stuff.
Well, we set it up this way because we did not want Main Street developing into a strip mall of medical marijuana places. So that's where the issue, it has to be your primary residence before you can do it. So, and that's why they're looking at this lot, because it gives them everything they need. They've got a 7,000 plus square foot building they can grow in. They got a storefront to carry the products for their caregivers and medical patients. And then they got a home to live in.
But are we rewriting the zoning laws by granting, making such a leap in interpreting the ordinance as this is a home occupation when it really isn't?
Well, that's for you folks to decide.
I mean, it seems like this may be a political decision the council needs to make.
Well, it doesn't meet the square footage necessary for a house, does it?
No, they can't meet, to do what they want to do, they can't meet that,
Right.
because that home is like 800 square
Too
foot,
small,
footprint of
yeah.
800 square feet.
Dwight, when you talk about how much square footage that they can grow in or perform in, who regulates that?
We do.
Code enforcement?
Yeah, the state has some guidelines on the size of the area you have. They limit you to the number of plants, so the canopy you have.
So they can't have a huge grow operation out there, they're gonna be limited to,
Right, the state,
how many plants can they actually have if we grant this?
there's 30 mature plants.
I could grow 30 mature plants. If I'm a patient, I could grow 6 myself, which does not take up a slot. And my fiance here, as a registered caregiver, can grow additional 30. And if she's a patient herself, she could grow 6.
So potentially 72 plants if you play your cards right.
Yes. With an unlimited amount of clones or seedlings.
With the-
Granted, they're within a certain size limit.
We're not gonna have a cornfield to pot, are we?
No,
No.
no, you're not.
I mean, I think that's sort of the hinting that the neighbors are hinting at. What are we not agreeing to is the way I read those letters.
Dwight, I understand that they're gonna have a store outside of the house.
That's correct.
How does that square with your customary home occupation?
Well, we have home, it all falls in that same, this is the problem, it falls in that same area, you can't really have more than 25%.
Well, don't they, in a customary home occupation, can you have a occupation located entirely in a separate building? Or is it-
Yes, you can, but it can only be 25% of the footprint of your home.
So we can only have 25%, 800, if we go by the
Yes,
ordinance.
Yes,
200 square feet.
It's 200, so 10 by 20,
yeah,
to grow 70, it won't work.
no.
Is that why you're saying the ordinance might be a little bit not
Well,
recognizing?
we didn't know what this, to see, when we did this, we did not have the final count from the state on what they were gonna allow for square footage. It was based always on the number of plants. But when you go with a 500-foot canopy, that kind of changes things a little bit. So,
Is this something the city council should have time to, I mean, we can grant a variance on existing law, but is it just gonna change next week so they're out of luck anyway? I don't wanna see them invest a ton of money on a
Yeah.
grant here today, and then tomorrow somebody takes it away.
I don't know what their time frame is, I don't know if they could wait 2 months for us to get something through.
Is
Well,
that something you would consider?
our whole thing here is to take the right foot forward. We don't want to be like 2 other stores within this Hancock County area, MDI, that go ahead and open up a storefront without town's approval. We've looked through you guys' laws and prohibitions on recreational and this home occupation deal, and we just want to put our best foot forward and work with the town and have the town's blessing to operate.
What's your time frame for going into full operation? Because I think what Dwight's hinting at is in the next 2 months, we're gonna have a lot more rules and regulations come out because the state's gonna be issuing their final,
Yep, the state's
retail.
redoing laws.
and then the city's gonna have to react to that. There's opt-in, opt-out options for the town, where and what, and, are you,
We're more than happy to work with the town.
well, if we
So we have
schedule
time.
this 2 months from now, after all laws came in, and we put you first on the list, and then we could give you, I hate to grant a variance that's no good.
No, I totally understand.
And, would you be willing to table this for 2 months to give the city and others Dwight will work with you. I know he works with everybody. I'd just like to see this turn out right for you if we can do it.
Yeah, we're more than happy.
And,
It's not an
and the
issue.
money invested is, have you done it yet?
No.
Are you living there?
Nope. Not currently not living there,
Is
no.
it gonna, I don't wanna screw up a John deal, but, I just think that would be the prudent move, because we don't know. You know, as a board, we're guessing what the state's gonna do with all these pot laws.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's fine.
And I think Steve was right, I think that would be a big jump for the appeals board to go from 25% to 125%.
All right, well,
I don't know on these things that you need to prove.
Well, I think you fail on at least two of those questions in the variance
Fail on,
let's,
checklist.
why don't we, at yours, my suggestion, put this into November 15th area, that's September, October, and that gives the town, I'm sure you can work with the town, they're more than willing to listen, I'm sure.
Yep.
the
And
other
we'll
thing,
schedule
Well,
this,
it'd probably have to be December, because we can't get on this month's planning board to be, we haven't got it rewritten yet.
is December too far out for you?
No. As long as I could have a shot at staying local and helping out this community I live in, I could wait.
All right, let's reschedule this
Yeah.
for December.
the other issue I see, Jeff, is that the city should deal with is that the 6 customers a day,
Yeah.
you can't consider that a space and bulk requirement. That's a change in use or an alteration of the use. So the city's gonna have to deal with that. I don't believe we could grant a variance for it.
Well, I think
Oh,
the
no.
council can make this allowed
The
use in
council can
certain
make it
zones.
allowable, but as the law stands today, I don't think we could grant a
I
variance.
see a hard road making this a variance.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and
we've been
that's
hesitant in
6.
the past too, if we've had abutters object to it, to change the variance.
But that's not a space and bulk change, that's a,
It's a
Change.
policy change.
Right.
I agree. All right, I'm gonna move to table this until December, so we can get a little more input from the city council
Yep.
on how they want to interpret and apply new laws that are coming. All, so I have a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Adjourn till December, and we'll get you a date. Lori will, probably the first or second week, Mondays, we always meet Mondays at 6:30. Make sure you're on the list
Okay.
and follow the city council carefully.
All right. Thank you guys very much for your time.
Thank you. All right, next item of business, request of Union River Associates Realty LLC for a tax abatement. Now, I know Jared Wilbur has employment through the impeller, so he is going to recuse himself. I would ask that Stephen take his place and bring his pretty name plaque up here, and then we can have all board members at the table. I would then ask that,
If you would, Steve, would you grab mine right beside you and bring it up to your right?
this,
Yeah, no, the name tag,
name
oh,
tag.
the name tag.
yeah.
And then I'd
Okay.
ask that the appellant be on this side, and Larry take the usual position defending the counsel. And then we haven't violated any social distancing rules.
Now they're all variance, who cares?
All right, all right.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Keep it on the right, I don't want to push the left.
Right.
All right.
I lean that way.
Before we begin, if you could, right along that way, each identify yourself, who you are, who your interests are. I think we know you are, but just for the record, I want to make a clean record of this, in case somebody doesn't like our decision.
Sure. My name is Ted Small. I'm here on behalf of Union River.
PSQ,
That's correct.
Ted Small, and you are, sir?
Dan McIntyre, manager of the Union River.
Dan McIntyre,
Correct.
I-N-T-Y-R-E?
MACINTYRE.
M-A-C-I-N-T-Y-R-E, McIntyre, and you represent
Union River.
Union River,
He's a manager. Their manager.
MGT. You can make decisions.
Correct. Sometimes.
Sometimes, okay. And then the next person, Larry Gardner,
City assessor.
and Counsel, can you please identify yourself?
Roger Huber on behalf of the assessor, Larry Gardner.
And which firm are you with, sir?
I'm sorry?
Which firm?
Farrell, Rosenblatt, and Russell.
Thank you. Now, for purposes of this review, before we start taking evidence, there's been some preliminary jockeying. The bottom line is, are we in line for hearing tonight?
I believe we are, sir.
Well, I don't want to believe, I want an agreement. I want to know that we're in line for a hearing, there are no procedural objections, no timing objections, no nothing. I saw a lot of correspondence, and we want to get this here so that we're not going to be, if you're unhappy and the city says, well, you didn't file this in time, that we're here for a hearing and you waiving in all those timing objections.
Yeah, we agreed that the hearing could be held today, extending what would have been the deadline.
And
so
this is a
that's correct.
hearing on the merits,
Correct.
okay? And now, I understand we have some call-in people.
Yes, our appraiser, Bill McLaughlin, will be calling in at 7 o'clock. Well,
Does the city oppose that?
No.
No.
Okay, so we're on the record as saying video testimony from him will be accepted, right? Both sides, yes, yes?
yes.
I have affirmative yeses. I've been beat up by judges all week long about these issues. So-
Now it's your turn?
Now it's my turn. Now, for purposes of this appeal, I have many properties, okay? And I'd like to clarify, there's map and lot 128-4, there's 128-7, there's 128-7-ON-O, there's 128-7-ON1. Can you tell them to stop talking?
Stop talking.
Yeah, thanks. Keep it down. Thank you.
Now they're hiding.
No, they should be. All right. Roger, come on back in.
Who, Jason, no?
Yeah, why don't we close that, close that door, if they won't come in, they can. The next property is 128-7-ON2. And the next one, 128-7-ON3. Now, in plain English, what is ON3? Which building?
I'm not sure.
I know you have the mall, you have
Yeah, we have all the pad sites.
governors and various, am I right to think there's separate parcels, right?
We always treated the property as one parcel, but, yeah.
They're separate tax parcels.
So which actual building is ON3, so we all know what you're talking about?
It'll take me a minute to find that.
Larry, do you know which one it is?
The 3 belongs to, well, I have Union River Associates, and it's 517,100.
Yeah, but which building is it? Is it Governors, is it
Dairy Queen,
Burger King, Taxi, which one, not Burger King, but
Dairy Queen,
Dairy Queen, not Dairy
Kentucky
Queen.
Fried Chicken.
Actually, Dairy Queen down there?
I think you have
Yeah.
it right in
Yeah, they
this,
got a lot.
right here.
ON3 you're asking about?
Yeah, ON3, and I'm gonna go right down through them all.
Governors.
That's Governors.
Okay.
It's on this list that was just sent today.
All right, I didn't get that one, sorry. What is ON2?
That would be,
AJ.
What's that?
AJ.
What's AJ? Is that the new doctor's place?
AJ.
No. Versus TB. Aroma Joe's.
Aroma Joe's, that's it.
Yeah,
Yep.
440 square feet.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's the coffee place, right?
Coffee shop.
Okay, and then we have ON1,
It's TB.
Yeah, what's TB? We don't have that TE Bank.
No.
The first? No, the
Taco
bank.
Bell.
The bank.
Taco Bell.
Taco Bell.
Taco Bell.
Kentucky Fried Chicken.
all right, so
Taco Bell.
ON1 is Taco Bell, and that's 730/4 assess. 128-7ON0, which one's that one?
Bank.
That's the bank.
Is that
The bank,
the
which is-
first tore down, replaced with the
Correct, with
doctor's
the urgent
office?
care facility,
I'm gonna put the first, and if I refer to it as the first, you know what I'm talking about.
correct.
Okay? Now, what is 128-7? Is that the,
That's the main mall.
The main
The
structure.
main shopping center.
okay, does that include TJ Maxx?
TJ Maxx,
All the way down,
Hannaford's.
all the
Mhm.
way to Hannaford's?
Correct. They're all connected.
And what is 128-4?
Which one? 4?
Yeah,
That's the Dairy Queen.
that's DQ is 14 million? Would 4 be the main mall and 7 be DQ?
I think so.
7 is the main mall.
There's something wrong there.
We got
Well,
the,
what I'm seeing here.
Yeah.
Yeah, 4 is Dairy Queen and 7 is the main
F4 is
mall.
Dairy Queen.
Well,
Yeah.
I got on my form, the DQ, land 3 million, building 12 million,
Yeah.
and then on 7, I got land 697,000 and building 667. That would seem to be a DQ.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they
Did we
Looks
get
like
these reversed?
reverse those, yeah.
Well, yeah, I'd want to make sure, I mean, what we're looking at something prepared by the appraiser to tell you what they are. I'd want to check the tax card.
Please, please, I want to make sure that
Yep.
when we're, because we're going to have to address them all separately. That's the way it goes.
So 128.4 we think is the main mall.
I think what, the numbers would seem to support that that's the main
the
mall.
$15 million tax bill, it must be the main mall.
You have the,
But the lot number could be wrong.
Ted,
yeah,
I don't believe the board has this.
what's that?
I don't believe the board has this.
Yeah, I know, I'll give them copies. I emailed them earlier, but I don't know if they have them. So I'm looking at the tax card, Larry.
For what map and lot?
We're trying to confirm that 128.7 is the main structure, right?
Yeah,
128.4 would seem, the numbers would seem to match the bigger property.
yeah.
It's right there.
120, so 128.7 is the main structure.
But that's 1.3. That doesn't sound right when
On the
you,
application?
Yeah, it's got, there's a transposition, apparently.
so what's 128/4?
Dairy Queen.
That's the Dairy Queen.
That's worth
That's $3 million
15.
land.
Do you see where we're, something's wrong there.
What's 3 million?
The
valuation-
application we have for map 128/4,
That should be the Dairy Queen.
but that's
The
50,
valuations are wrong.
you're saying DQ's worth 15 million bucks?
No, I'm saying that there was a transposition.
What does that mean?
It looks like on the application, the map and lot numbers were referenced incorrectly. So 128.4 should say 128.7.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
it does.
Okay.
There's two 128/7s. There's one, the second 128/7 says 697 for land, 667 for building. What would that include?
That should be,
On 128.4?
Yeah,
Should be 128.4.
Yeah, he's saying 697 for the land assessed, that's what the assessor's saying. And improved asset
Hold on,
is
hold on.
598.
land assessment 697.2. Yeah, that should be, that's 128, that should be 128.4. See, they got reversed. Does that make sense?
yes, so I'm gonna, 128/4 should be DQ,
Right,
and 128/7
should be the
the
main
mall.
structure.
Okay, boom, this is, okay, now we know what we're talking about.
Okay.
All right, as far as the record goes, we have all the applications here. We have submissions by appellant of exhibits 1A, there's 1, then there's A, B, C, D, and E, correct?
Sounds correct, yes.
And that's the record you want us to have.
Yes, and I have a supplement that I tried to email earlier that I have copies of, it's short.
Can
that I
you
provide.
hand that out now,
I
sir?
certainly can. You folks have copies?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. And this will, why don't we mark this F?
Sure.
I'm gonna put F on this, and if we could, is this record, okay, do we have their original submission like this? Lori always has the big submission like this that goes in for the, do we have that for you?
Right here.
Okay, that's the original one, and can you add an exhibit F and add it to that file, which is the thing he just handed out. That's the clean copy. You put it over, right over there. And that's the clean copy that anybody that wants to review our handiwork can review. Is that fair with everybody?
Did an
And
F
then
get
we have working
added to it?
copies.
You have the F added to that? No, 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 the one he just handed out.
He handed out this right here. Can you mark an extra one and mark that F? Do you have extra ones?
Yes, I do.
Can you mark an F right in the corner and add it right to that on the very back? And therefore, your record will be, is there any other documents you want us to consider?
Not at this time. I assume as the testimony develops, things might come up, but
All right, and
Yeah.
if you could, if you're gonna refer to something, I'm gonna go on tab 1, A, B, C, and I'm sure we're gonna be referred to C a lot.
okay,
That's kind of what I suspected. That's the big report on everything.
right.
All right, any other things in the record from the city?
The only item that I'd like to include is the Union River's response to the Assessor's 706 request. Do you have any,
That, which one?
July 6, 2020?
Oh, the second request?
Correct.
You can submit, yeah, I have no objection to you submitting that.
Okay. So this is coming in without objection, and I would assume all the appellant's submissions come in without objection.
Correct.
I don't
Thank
think
you, Roger.
authenticities and all that stuff that we,
This is gonna be G?
yeah, can we mark, actually,
I marked it as appellant,
why don't we-
Assessor's 1, but
yeah, let's make this assessors 1. Number 1. Thank you. Anything else any party wants us to consider before we dive into this? All right, now, as far as order of presentation, I don't know how many of you on this board have done a tax abatement before. The rules is quite simple. There's a presumption that the city assessor's numbers are correct. The appellant has the burden of showing, and he can give us the standards, unfair, unjust, whatever. We hear all that evidence on each and every parcel. And we have to make a threshold determination as to whether the city's numbers are correct. If we believe they're correct, it ends. If we believe that they have met their burden, it's by a preponderance of the evidence, that the assessment is wrong, we go to phase 2. And then we hear their arguments on, and then we have to make an independent determination as to what each property is valued at based on what we hear here today. That's the procedure. Council, do you disagree with that synopsis?
no, that's,
Pretty much it?
Yeah, I guess I'd just say that, as alluded to in our submission, and I think Mr. McIntyre made a statement to that effect earlier, that it is permissible under the law where the taxpayer, where the subject property in question functions as a single economic unit, to look at it as a single economic unit. But then I think you're correct, Mr. Chair, that the board, assuming we present evidence that the board deems credible to establish that the assessor's assessment is unjust, the board can then make its own independent determination regarding the proper values.
Now, just so I understand, Union River Associates Realty Holdings LLC owns everything.
Correct.
Correct.
That is the entity seeking the tax abatement.
Correct.
There was some other references to who owned what, and it was slightly different. I know Mr. McQuinn had different things in different names.
There are, some of them have been assessed to different names. In some instances, variations of the Union River name. It's all in fact owned by the same entity. How it came that different names are used on the tax assessment, we don't know.
So can we treat the appellant on all properties collectively as Union River Associates Holdings LLC, Realty Holdings
Do you
LLC?
have any objection to that?
No objection.
And to the extent that a legal distinction down the road were to
Right.
be, I used to represent Crum and Forster, and then there was Crum and Forster Inc.
Right.
And then Crum and Forster Inc. 2, and then the appellant, they never got that distinction, right?
Right, right.
One was a holding company.
Right.
And one was worth a lot of money.
Right.
All right, so, and then I want to just clarify, Governor's is a tax assessed at 517 right now. That's ON3. You get a tax bill on Governor's, assessing it at 517.
Correct?
And then
And,
on
well, 517-1, but yeah,
517.1, and you pay a tax bill on that, and then you pay a tax bill on Aroma Joe's assessed at $53,300. You pay another tax assessment on Taco Bell, $730,400. And then you get a separate bill for the first, which is the doctor's office, for $640, right? And then you get a fifth,
600,
$600,400.
400. Right.
I'm gonna, to the extent that I botched the numbers,
We're going to rely on the documents.
please.
Yeah.
Okay?
Otherwise, we'll be correcting each other all
Oh,
night.
but that's it. And then we have DQ, land, 697,200, building, 667,800, for a total value assessed, 1.365 million.
Right.
And finally, the bigger part of the mall, where I think we're gonna have a real battleground tonight, preview coming attractions. Land worth 3 million, building 11,951,700, right?
Correct.
The total assessed value is 14,951,700.
Correct.
Now, I'm gonna ask Larry some questions.
I got, just a second, Mr. Chairman. I thought we straightened this out, but tax map 128 lot 4 is the Dairy Queen lot.
Right.
But the value that is charged to that lot is 14,951,000.
No,
Does he have-
change that 7 to 4 and use the 1.3 right here, Steve.
All right, so that, we do have to change those numbers up there. It's map
Just to change Matt Law.
28.
Lot. But the 1.365 is DQ, which was formerly, what was that, Morrison's? That wasn't Morrison's, it was,
Dowling. Dowling.
Buick Cadillac dealership.
Yeah.
Dow's.
it was a car dealership. And then 128/4 originally, the 4 changed to a 7 is the main mall.
Okay.
Okay, now, I want to ask Larry some questions. How long on Governor's, I'm going to go right through each one, how long has that value been assessed to DQ? Is that a new number? Is that an old number? Is that a number that has historically been the assigned value? And I know it's a new building, but when did that number get assigned?
As soon as it got built,
So recent.
within the last 2 years, yeah.
And Aroma Joe's, same thing, how long has that value assessment been on the property?
That's always been there for a while.
Okay? And then Taco Bell, has that always been there?
It's always been there, it's had some
No.
renovations.
Mr. Small, obviously you'll have time to comment on this. I'm trying to get procedurally how long these numbers have been, and you'll get my drift later. And as far as the first goes, is that for the first, or is that the value on the new building that just went in there?
The appeal was for the April 1st, 2019 assessment, and the bank was still in operation, yeah. So it
All right.
was for the bank.
All right, so theoretically, there could be a reassessment down the road, because it's a nice building. I don't know what they spent on it, but what the heck. And then DQ, that's brand, actually, Governor's wasn't built recently, but DQ is new building.
Yeah, when-
How long has that assessment been out?
I think this is the second year of assessed value.
Okay? And then finally, on the mall, how long have they been being taxed at $14,951,000?
But the whole thing has been,
Years and years and years and years?
may have had a lower value, but yeah, yes.
Has there
Six-
been any, I'm gonna get right to this point. Since malls have been ripped apart, has this been lowered at all? Or has it always been maintained as one number without taking into consideration it's half empty?
Can you say that again?
You have an assessment on the entire mall, starting with TJ Maxx, going all the way down through, and Hannaford's. And we know Hannaford's is there, doing well. Then we got empty malls, parts, and then, is Olympia still in there?
Yes,
They're still operating. And then we have a clothing store, or whatever it is, shoe store, and then a lot of empty. And then we have TJ Maxx, half the space that, what used to be, what was there before?
Martin's
Was it Martin's, and before Martin's, it was?
was Ames.
Ames, all right. Have there been any adjustments in the last 8 years to the numbers that we're seeing here tonight?
just for renovations, yeah.
But have you taken into consideration the fact of emptiness caused by economic issues?
Yes, I've looked at the market for malls.
Have they dropped at all? Would seem to me an empty mall is not as worth as much as a full mall.
Well,
We'll be addressing that issue
All right.
as part of our case in chief.
All right, okay. But this number, 14,951, has that been in place for 10 years?
no,
Was it higher before?
it was lower.
It was lower, so it's gone up.
Yes, as you may recall, we had an appeal in 2014, and we settled outside, before the Board of Appeals, Board of Assessment Review met on that. And,
I thought that was Shaw's.
no, it
No,
was
it was this
Main
one.
Coast Mall,
It was this one, you guys agreed that that was the value.
back in 2014, yes. And that
Okay.
was an agreed-upon value for 3 years that would stay there unless there were building permits issued.
Was council aware of that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, with that background and that sort of record established, if we could start with governors, tell us why 517-100 is not good.
Okay, if
Have
we're
to
gonna get,
defer to Bill McLaughlin.
yeah, I was just gonna say, we would,
Is that Bill? Can you hear us, Bill?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep. Can you raise your right hand? Good for you. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and the cause now in hearing.
I do.
All right. It's your floor. Tell us why governors 128-7ON-3, do you know, is why 517-100 is not the number we should use?
Mr. Chair, may I just tell him that I had provided this document to you folks?
Yes, and if, I should probably allow you to question him too. I'm pushy this way.
That's okay, I just wanted, Bill, can you hear me? This is Ted Small.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted you to know, because it all happened late, so to speak. I did just provide the board with the supplement to your appraisal.
Yes.
So I'll leave it up to you to answer the question about the value of that particular property, but I wanted you to know that the board has both your original appraisal and the supplemental materials.
All right, he's the author of C, Exhibit C, and E, correct?
I think it was F, the supplement?
Was it
I think
F?
was F.
Okay. All right, what did I do? Here it is. Okay, thank you.
So I don't know if you want to repeat that question, I don't know if you...
You're the author of what we are calling Exhibit C, which is appraisal of real estate as of April 1st, 2019. And then there's a supplement as of 2019 addendum. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And a year has passed. Is this 2019 or should that be 2020?
No, that's the tax year being appealed, April 1, 2019.
All right, good.
Yep.
I'm glad I corrected. Thank you. Go ahead.
Oh, I didn't know if you
My question
want,
to him would be, tell us why we should, which number we should use, but your witness, I should allow you to present.
well, I'm glad to have him, I mean, you had a question that you had forefront in your mind. I'm glad to have him address that before I get into questioning him.
Tell me why we should or shouldn't use the number 517-100 for governors.
Okay, the analysis I presented, the addendum, that provides a fee simple analysis, which is how assessors typically value properties in many cities and towns throughout New England. The assessment of 517 does not include the land value. The way the assessor broke down the entire center is based on the fact that the larger center and 4 of the pad sites are on one site. So he valued the land and the older center under one tax card. And then he had 5 supplemental tax cards, 4, that just reflected the building values for those 4 improvements. He didn't allocate a land value because he had already taken care of that in the master site. So it's tough to compare apples to apples, but actually, in my valuation, I feel the governor's building contributes more than what the assessor has on record as the assessment, because he doesn't have the land value allocated to that specific building.
So is the 517-100 correct?
I can't argue whether or not that's correct or not because he doesn't have the land value attached to that portion of the property.
So
when he values the property, he's valuing the land and then the buildings, and he valued the land separately, which is accurate. But when you break down the individual buildings, there's no specific assessment towards the land for that supports those buildings. For example, Governor's, Aroma Joe's, Taco Bell, and what was the bank building.
Okay. Should there be a land value in here? Or is
He's already included it on the master site. He has the master site valued at $3 million.
Okay. So he's saying that the whole real estate out there underneath everything is $3 million. But
Correct.
and then he's placing a value of 517-100 on the building. Do you disagree with that is that building worth 517 assessment value?
So when I looked at the valuation, I allocated a higher value because my allocation would include a land value, whereas his did not.
So you're getting a break here then, right?
No. We don't know what we're getting because there's no specific land value to that portion of the site.
Why can't you appraise just the building like
So-
Larry does?
Because it's not just the building, it's the land and the building. So really, in my opinion, you really should be looking at the larger site in the combination of the 4 pad sites that are on the larger site as well as the center.
Well, if we were to conclude 517 is a fair and accurate representation on the value of the building that's called Governor's, do you have a disagreement with that finding?
I don't have a disagreement with it at this point. I didn't analyze it based on just the building
Okay,
because there's 2 components of value, the land and the building.
okay. Then, let's go to Aroma Joe's, which is 128-7 ON-2. He didn't do the land, he just did the building, and this is the coffee shop in front of the store. He's got a value of 56.3 on just the building. Do you agree or disagree with that value for the building only?
I'm sorry,
I understand your argument about the land being different, and I get that.
which property are you asking about again? I'm sorry.
This is
So my analysis follows for all 4 pad buildings.
128-7 ON-2.
Taco Bell, the former bank, and the Governor's.
Yeah, but this would be the Aroma Joe's, the 56,300. That's what, Larry says this building that serves coffee and other things is worth 56.3. Do you agree or disagree with that number?
again, I did the same analysis on those 4 buildings. They're all on the master site, so his value, we don't value just a building, we value the building and the land. So if you want to, kind of go down that path with that argument, we could look at Dairy Queen, because Dairy Queen's on its own freestanding site, and he valued the land and the building. So he has the land valued at $697,200 and a total value of $1,365,000. So if you want my value on that, I feel that that property is worth $600,000.
Both land and building?
Correct.
How did you arrive at that number?
We applied a standard approach to value income-producing properties. Income-producing properties are those that are encumbered by leases. This property would be purchased by an investor who would look at, okay, who's in here, what's the rent they're paying, what's an appropriate capitalization rate to apply to that rent to arrive at value. And so that's what we did. It's the standard method of appraising income-producing properties. And in the exercise that I completed just yesterday, which is the fee simple analysis, as opposed to applying what the current tenant is paying for rent, I applied a market rent, which I extracted from the market based on data from other properties in the region. And then I applied a small vacancy allowance and arrived at an NOI of roughly $42,294, which is what an investor could expect to achieve. After a year of holding the property, he would, enjoy that income stream. So investors typically apply a capitalization rate to that, and I applied an 8.5% capitalization rate, which is, under the conditions in 2019, would be considered an appropriate rate for a retail property in Ellsworth, Maine.
The land, he values the land at $697,200. How much actual land is that? Because there used to be a huge car dealership, and it goes all the way back. There's a lot of area there on High Street, and if this is only worth $300,000, I know a lot of people will stand right in line and pay that right now.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems to be your analysis. Total land and building 600. Why should we view that as remotely in line with what property values are on High Street and that particular property, which is fairly large, vacant, and has a nice building on it now, that I can imagine didn't cost $300,000 to build?
So the reason being is I am replicating what an investor would do in the marketplace, and in valuing this property, I valued the entire property, including the other center, the rest of the center, and the other pads, assuming sale to one investor. Given the fact that the property, the larger center, has significant vacancy of close to 40%, an investor does not allocate any value to land on a current basis when you have a center that's got that much vacancy. So they would look at the income stream of the property and the income that the property could potentially generate, which is the Dairy Queen building. The fact that it's got land behind it, it has no tenants. It's been marketed for a couple of years without any success to find anyone. A prudent investor today, or in 2019, would not look to pay more for that land, knowing full well that he'd have more carrying costs than any luck potentially doing a build-to-suit on the site.
I have a question for the mall manager. Dan, what's your rent roll on that Dairy Queen parcel?
The rent roll on that?
Yep.
I think I'm around 90, not even 90,000. I think I'm 80, about 80, between 80 and 90,000 gross
So they
rent.
pay the mall $90,000 per
Correct.
year for that piece of land?
Correct.
Plus taxes, plus maintenance and things
Correct.
like that? Plus they paid to put the building there as a leaseholder improvement.
Pardon?
They paid to put the building there as a leaseholder improvement?
Correct.
All right. So the income off that property is at least $90,000 a year.
Correct.
Can I also ask Mr. McIntyre, I know I've got questions of
Please,
Bill, but.
please.
Okay.
I was kind of hoping to go property by property,
Yeah.
so the record is real clear. You know,
I hear
somebody
you.
reviewing this can say, oh, we're looking at the DQ lot, and I don't mind if he jumps around.
Understood, yeah, well, I think that there's a point that adds to what Mr. McIntyre had to say, and I'll just, not Mr.
Please,
McIntyre,
please,
Mr. McLaughlin.
listen, we're gonna, everyone ask all their questions of this witness as we go. Please
Okay.
just identify who's talking.
Okay.
So if a transcript needs to be made,
We
we'll
know.
know it's Mr. Small.
Yep, this is Ted Small. So I'm gonna ask Mr. McIntyre, honestly, I can't remember who asked the question now, but a member of the board asked Mr. McLaughlin about, you know, why wouldn't we look at the Dairy Queen property, a standalone property with a lot of land, why wouldn't it be valued higher? And to that point, I ask you, as the manager of the property, are there issues with trying to look at individual pieces of this property as segregable from the rest of it? And
You definitely have issues there in getting that because of, visibility. Everybody wants to be out on High Street. So the further you go back in, you can't collect as big a rents. One of the reasons that we did is we put that road in to tie it back into the mall so that it would be contiguous. And, but even so,
Is there an issue though with looking at individual pieces? I'm just, when I say the property, I'm talking about everything.
Right.
Are there issues with looking at individual pieces and what an individual piece might be worth to an investor? Like, in other words, would you sell off the Dairy
No.
Queen separately?
no,
Why
because
not?
the reason for that you don't do that is because if you cherry pick that all out, the good stuff, then you're not gonna get any money for the back part, the liability part. So you need to keep it together to achieve the maximum value out of the thing. You sell all the grapes, nobody wants the vine,
When you say the back piece, do you mean the main
The
shopping center?
main shopping center, going from TJ Maxx down to Hannaford's.
Okay. All right, I didn't mean to interrupt the flow. We were talking about Dairy Queen.
Do you want to add anything else why we should not consider using the values on the DQ property that are presented? Namely, the land at 697.2 and the building at 667,800. Anything else you want to add? And if you want to come back, you can. Anything else you want to add, sir?
I talked to me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
No, I just want to, I guess I would just reiterate the fact that what I have done is apply the customary approach to how investors look at this type of property. I think as you all well know, retail is kind of suffering these days, and the Dairy Queen is certainly at the front of the site, and so that, benefits that property, but the lots behind it, it's a hard time to sell those or even attract tenants. Everyone's kind of contracting at this point in time, and it's highly unlikely with the lack of visibility that you're going to find any tenants in the near future to potentially ground lease those sites. And the date of value is as of April 1st, 2019. So in theory, a few years from now, if the market rebounds and you land some tenants there, the value will appreciate. But that value has not been captured to date.
So what value would you put on the land and what value would you put on the building for the DQ lot?
I put a collective value of $600,000, and I didn't break out the valuation of the land versus building, but I would, if it was absolutely necessary, because I think really what we're looking at the total value, not the components, but I would apply a standard of maybe 25% land value to overall value.
So 450 to the building and 125 to the land?
If your math's correct, yes. I'm just speaking off the cuff. I didn't value it that way.
Okay. All right. But you would give that lot a value, a tax value of $600,000?
As of April 1st, 2019, the way it's currently positioned, yes.
Okay. We have Taco Bell, we have the first, where the first is, and then we have the main mall.
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
may I ask you a question before we leave DQ?
Absolutely. Well, I was gonna go through with, here's my plan. Get their values, and then you respond one right after another to tell us why. That way it's one smooth presentation from them first, and then when I'm done asking them questions, I'm gonna ask them, what else do you want to present? So that they have a full record of what they want us to hear. Then I'm gonna get your side, because they have the burden, okay? You will not be shut down. All right, I'd like to address Taco Bell, and then the doctor's office, and then a lot of my questions concern the main mall. That's where I think there's a lot of discussion might want to be had. But Taco Bell, I understand you're arguing about land. The building for Taco Bell is valued by the city at $730,400. Tell us why that's the number we should not use.
The Taco Bell is assessed at what number?
$730,400. There's no land value under that.
Right. Hold on one second.
KFC.
KFC.
I've got
So
another,
again, I'm going to reiterate that I did not break out the land value, but I will, let's apply the 25% to my total value for a land allocation.
Yep.
Just for the, because you're looking for a breakdown, I would say if I valued the Taco Bell individually at $670,000
I think it's a,
and allocate 25% to the land, I'd say that, but it's not separated out, so you can't sell it separately. So it's kind of a exercise in futility, but I'd say the land's worth $167,500. But then when we say what land, how much land are we speaking of? It's not separate from the rest of the parcel. So really, the pad sites on the main parcel should all be considered under one valuation for the property as a whole. It's not separated out. The only reason the assessor separates it out is because they apply a replacement cost valuation to the buildings to arrive at their assessed value. And that's why they separated those out but didn't allocate any land value to those components because they didn't look at it as a whole.
I just want to make sure, I think you said 670,000, but if I'm reading your supplement correct, I think I see a 570,000. I just want to make sure we have the right numbers. Is it 570 or 670?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. The print's too small here.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time reading it too.
So we should
Are we
use,
saying 570 even or 567, 988?
It's a rounded value. So
you would play,
whenever we appraise something, we're not that good that we'd say it's 567,988.
Whose
So I
fig-
rounded it
whose
to
figure is that?
570,000. It's commonly accepted practice to round.
Whose number is the 567, 988?
That's his number, but he rounded it up.
That's my number, but it's rounded.
yeah, what he's saying is that 500, okay, in, just for the record, Exhibit F on page 4, the third set of displays, he's got TV, and then he goes across and he says fee simple value 567,988, and he's rounded that up to 570. That's the value he would like the city to use for this property. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And you would like to see land and building assessed together, but that's not what's been done here. So if we,
Actually, it doesn't matter to me. I think the value is captured when you add up the value of 225 High Street and then the 4 pad sites. When you add all that up, the assessor, that's his value on that portion of the property, because those sections cannot be sold separately. It's all on one tax lot, and they should be valued as a single entity.
okay,
You can't go and sell the Taco Bell or Roma Joe's, Governor's, or what used to be the bank alone, as it currently stands, because it's on one single site.
okay. All right, so you would prefer the city to assess the building called Taco Bell at 570,000?
That's what that portion of the property contributes to the overall value.
Okay. Okay, then the next part is 128-7ON0, which is where the first used to be. And so we have to value the bank. That's the assessment we're going on, not the doctor's office. The bank has since been rezzed, or whatever they use the word, and a new building exists there. But you're saying that the city assessed the bank at $600,400. And I see that in your assessment, you assess it at $640,000. Right? And then again, I'm looking at page 4, the August 23rd, 2020 Exhibit F at the bottom.
Yeah.
Should we just leave that one alone?
Again, his assessment doesn't include the land value, whereas mine includes some type of imputed land value associated with that portion of the property.
If we were to ask you to deduct what you would consider land value from your assessment of 640, what value would you put on the building alone, which used to be the first, which is no longer there?
I'm not prepared to answer that question.
Okay,
If you just wanted to know what the building was worth,
yeah.
I mean, I could apply that allocation, but it's not the exercise I went through.
Okay. Would the gentleman beside you, Mr. McIntyre, like to offer us an opinion? I mean, we put him on the spot, and I don't want, and he's not prepared.
Yeah.
That's fine, that happens.
It really wasn't worth much. It was-
What would you like?
If I were to put a
listen,
price on it, 150 grand.
Well, okay, is that the value you would like us to use for the bank?
For the bank, yeah, because it was only there for, 1 month after the tax thing there. And it was raised.
But we have to look at it as.
I understand.
I don't want to put your man on the spot. He doesn't have I think what he wants to do is apply the 25-75% model that he's done.
I know what he's, if I can interject,
The point-
I think what he's
My
trying
point
to
is that
do.
you're looking at trying to value something. You're asking me what the land value is. How big is the land?
See, normally things like this that have pad sites in a shopping center like this are contiguous property. And to get a buyer, they buy everything. If you sell off the individual parts, then you're left with the rear brake drum that's not really worth much. And so you get more money and more buyers by keeping it all together.
But you would, I guess, I don't mean to substitute I don't know if this was his question or not, but Mr. McLaughlin suggested, on the spot, we had to apply a ratio, it would be a 75-25% ratio, and
Yeah.
would you agree with that?
I'd agree with that.
All right, I got my calculator out, and I'm using his $600,000, he had 640, I times that by 0.75, I come up with 480 for what would be the building.
I'll defer to your calculator.
But is that the value you want us to use? I know you'd like to go 150
Correct,
because
yes.
it wrecked it. I mean,
I'm a
the new
reasonable
owner
person.
wrecked it.
Let's go.
I wouldn't have wrecked it, I like the building. But can we use 480 is what you would like us to use? Okay.
Yes.
All right. You see what I'm trying to do here? Is
Oh, no,
get your
I do.
numbers and then let Larry defend himself. Okay? Now, the final property, which, now I understand the assessment includes, if you were to drive down High Street going towards Bar Harbor, TD Bank is not part of your property.
Correct.
The motel is not part of your property.
Correct.
The property kind of has, and then the front part where the telephone company is not your property.
It is our property.
It is that part of this assessment?
Correct.
Okay? So the line kind of goes right beside the grocery store, out back around, and comes back around where DQ is, and includes, it doesn't include McDonald's,
No,
but it does include Governor's, and that's the land assessment of $3 million.
correct.
That's all the land involved. Is that accurate? Trying to give people here on the board a
Which one's
visual.
the telephone company?
That's on the mall property.
Okay, but it's not
not
broken
being
out
appealed.
separately. Okay.
Okay?
Oh, okay.
So that's what you're saying, Larry says is 3 million. And then buildings, he's included for this 11,951,700 assessment, includes Hannaford's, and then if you were to drive through the mall, you'd go through where the shopping center is, where the cinema used to be. Is the cinema open anymore?
No,
No, that's empty. That's all empty. All those stores in there.
that
are
whole
empty.
lower part of the mall is
Is
empty.
empty. And
Has
then,
been
then we got the corner one where there used to be the restaurant. Is that empty?
empty,
But then we have Olympia Sports,
still going.
still going, and then we have a new tenant, which is Shoes.
Olympia Shoes has been there for quite some time.
Is there a dry cleaner?
No, it's a laundromat.
It's a laundromat. That's been there, but that's last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, that's been about 5 years now.
And then we have something else. Then
Label
we-
shopper, discount shopper.
And then we have a lot of empty.
A lot of empty space.
And Radio Shack was in there. That's gone.
Gone.
And then-
Payless gone.
TJ Maxx only took half of what was
Half of
Ames.
half of the old Martins, which was the old Ames.
So that's what Larry is assessing as being worth 11,951,700.
The building,
The building.
yes.
But I
Does
want to
that
get,
include the US Cellular building?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Where's the cellular building?
No, the USL isn't in that number that he just gave you. He's just talking about the main structure.
okay, is the
Correct.
US Cellular part,
US Cellular is a ground lease.
All right, is the land underneath that part of the
That is
assessment?
ours.
Is the building assessed included in Larry's 11 million?
No.
Is that a separate assessment? But it's not here for review?
I don't think any of these pad sites are included in that 11 million.
I understood that the mall itself, the big part out back,
Right,
that's what we're talking 11 million.
correct.
Right, it's actually close to 12 million.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, 11,951, that's
That's
definitely
12,
close to 12
basically.
million.
Right,
All right,
to me, that's
That's
12.
what was assessed.
Correct.
All right, so I just want to get a visual figure of what we're talking about. Now, your man, hi, we're back.
Back to you, Bill.
All right, all right. The town assesses the land that we just described at 3 million, and it assesses the building, which is the mall part only, as 11,951,700. Tell me why we shouldn't use those numbers.
Because I went through an analysis where I looked at, I looked to the market to see what you could achieve for rents for this type of space. I looked at market conditions with respect to retail, how, it's suffering, there's high vacancy rate, particularly at the subject property. It's an old Ames facility. It's an old department store, so the way that the building is presently laid out, there's a significant amount of functional obsolescence, meaning that another tenant coming in today would not really want that space in the rear. It's too deep. It's not what a tenant's looking for these days. And then I compared those rents that I found in the market to the subject property to arrive at what I felt was a fair market rent for the different types of spaces at the property. We typically break things down by the size of the space. We look at anchors and junior anchor spaces, to see what they can achieve for rent. And because they're larger spaces, they typically rent for less per square foot as compared to what we call inline space, which is kind of like the space that Radio Shack would be in, or something to that effect. It's a smaller space. So what we ended up concluding was you could achieve $6.50 per square foot on the anchor spaces, and on the smaller spaces, we concluded that you could achieve $10 per square foot. Further supporting those numbers, we also looked at the existing rent roll at the property to see what those spaces were achieving for rents on a current basis. And we determined that the anchor and junior anchor tenants, which included Hannaford's, Label Shopper, and TJ Maxx, were paying roughly about $6.45 per square foot. We concluded to a rent of $6.50, which is further supported by market comparables from other centers in the region. Then we looked at the inline spaces. At the time that we were looking at it, there were only 3 spaces that were really leased: the Laundry, the Fitness, and Olympia Sports. And their average rent in place was $9.43. We also looked at the market to see what those type of spaces would rent for. We concluded to $10 per square foot. So we came up with multiplying the square footage of those types of spaces by those rents to arrive at what we felt the property could achieve if it was 100% occupied. And we determined that the rents it could achieve collectively would be $1,344,754. And we looked to the market, because when you're valuing a property, you look to see how investors would value the property. And we looked at the existing vacancy at the property, knowing that it was an older center, built in 1967, very difficult to lease. It's starting to fall into a C class of property, very unattractive to investors as well as tenants. And we applied a 35% vacancy allowance. That 35% results in a deduction of what the annual rent would be by roughly $470,000. Then we also deducted what we call non-recoverable expenses. Typically, for retail tenants, they pay, say the landlord incurs insurance expense of 20 cents per square foot. Typically, that expense is passed on to the tenant, but then there are some expenses, management fees. Sometimes some tenants have modified leases that they don't fully reimburse for repairs and maintenance, insurance, or real estate taxes or management. And we allocated a deduction of $250,000, which is just over $1.25 per square foot of building area, to arrive at a NOI of $624,090. That's what an investor would look at as, this is my potential income stream for this property if I were to acquire it. And then I applied what we call the capitalization rate, which is also extracted from the market, and based on what we found in evidence in the marketplace and other trades, we felt 8.5% would be appropriate. And we came up with the value of that portion of the property of $7,300,000.
Is that land and building?
That's land and building, yeah.
Okay.
It's also the land underlying the Taco Bell, Aroma Joe's, and Governor's, and what was the bank space.
Okay. So you want us to go from 14,951 to 7.3 million.
Yes. Well,
Okay.
that's what I feel the fair value is.
Okay. Now,
Fee simple value.
my questions are this. Malls are going out left and right. And Larry, you can maybe address this later, but, and I know it was built in 1967. I remember when it was built. We were-
You don't remember very well then, because I started it in 1971.
No, it was before that. They cleared it out. I thought they did. Anyway, but it's been around for 50 years, right? And then, what's the future of retail? Honest to God, what's the future of retail?
After COVID,
Yeah, well, and if I can ask you some questions in that vein, if it's okay with you, Mr.
Please,
Chair.
it's your presentation.
Um,
I'm just, these are my thoughts. I
Yep.
mean, I'm trying to get a value on this. And
Sure. So tying into the question that the chair just asked you and some of the comments from Mr. McLaughlin, can you just tell the board a little bit about the difficulties presented to you by, in renting this space? Difficulties relating to the structure itself, the retail market, or anything else?
I think you have to start with the geographic location of it. The demographics here, the city of Ellsworth is what, less than 8,000 people, or just capping 8,000 people? You talk to any of these national tenants anymore, and they have a certain demographic box that they want to fit in. And typically, that's for the first 1 to 3 miles outside of the range is like 30 to 50,000 people. That's what their primary goal is, to get into those markets. We're in a quadrary market here. Primary markets, secondary markets, and tertiary markets, that's their targets first before they get out to us. You do everything you can to try to pull them out. But with tenants now with businesses, retail businesses going bankrupt left and right, they always go in to backfill in the primary and secondary and tertiary spots first. before they start branching to get out to areas like ours. You induce them by lowering the rents, helping with the build-out, even to offer free rent for 2 years, I mean, in order to get here. We get so close, and then another retailer will go out of business, and they see a better place to spend their money to go into business in a better location. It's real tough because just before COVID, we were about having 3 deals signed, gone like that overnight.
And what about the actual structure itself?
The
Is
structure
anything
itself.
with the age, the design of it that causes problems?
It's
and everything?
old, it's been had a lot of deferred maintenance, previous to me coming on. I've been, making infrastructure improvements to it, fixing roofs here and there, changing out the HVAC systems as I go. It takes money to do that, and, you got less people there now paying rent, so he has less money to work with. It's hard to attract tenants out there.
And what about the size of the spaces available?
Spaces are too deep. Traditionally, they also don't like having that heated hallway that they feel that they have to pay for. I mean, back in the 60s, when it was 50 cents a gallon for oil, it was not a problem. But when now sometimes the oil fluctuates up to $5 a gallon, it's a big issue.
So if you could
So they
explain
all
that
want
for
to come out to the
board.
front. Mhm.
Explain to the board what you mean as a hallway. What's the layout of the property look like?
I think we're all familiar with, we've been
Okay.
out
Yeah,
there.
I'm pretty sure they've all
Yeah,
been
they fill it
there.
up with
Okay.
Christmas
Yeah.
selling places,
All right.
and then it's empty.
Okay.
Right?
But all the modern day tenants, they don't want that hallway. They want to come to the front. So I get somebody, I will come out to the front, as long as I can get it past code enforcement and the fire marshal. And I've also told the tenants that I have in there that they might have to, if somebody else, a major tenant comes in, to get rid of that hallway. It's kind of dated. It's all dated. And a lot of work to go on there.
And is some of the space that's been vacant large space?
Yeah, we have a space that's well, it's over 30,000 square feet. That's the other half of the Mardens that was left over. And there's very few big boxes around that want to come out to this area. And the other thing you have to watch is, like, I could have had Big Lots out there. I mean, they wanted to come out there, but I can't because the deal I have with Hannaford, who's an anchor, they have exclusives. And you can't sell food when you got Hannaford, so. And I'll
It
tell
sounds
you
like
what.
they're getting a good deal
Yeah.
at $6 a square foot.
So, yeah, so you kind of, and TJ Maxx has exclusives. You can't have a restaurant next to them. You can't have somebody that sells over 4,000 square feet of shoes. And there's all these little intricate things that you have to work with. So some tenants you can't even get out there.
And what are some concessions you've tried to make to, for example, TJ Maxx or other tenants?
As far as,
Incentives to keep them or get them?
I don't know, I mean, to get TJ Maxx, I mean, they actually occupy 30,000, a little bit over 30,000 square feet, and that's what they pay on. And, no, they pay on 26,000 square feet. So I'm covering the other 4,000 plus square feet that they use, because that's part of the deal. Plus, I also had to pay for their build-out, which was $250,000, my part. It took like 4 years before we actually started making money off of this deal. Now we're back in the negotiations because their lease is about coming to an end here. And with the COVID thing, I mean, there's a lot of contraction going on in real estate right now, in retail real estate.
Well, what's the future for Hannaford's here? They're not leaving us.
Hannaford's is loving it. They're not leaving, There's no doubt. But even so, I had to renegotiate their lease, 2 years ago, Had to make concessions on that one. Yeah, they put $4 million into the building, but did they really do anything to the building? No, it was just dressing up their aisles and making it a little bit cleaner and nicer inside. But really, is there any value in that to me for the building? I don't think so. The same with TJ Maxx, when they did $250,000, last year or the year before? I mean, that was mostly store stuff, to make it look more pleasant. It really didn't change the outline of the building or anything. It just updated a little bit inside, so.
So what is the future of retail?
I think eventually retail will always come back. It's just a matter of staying power, People are always gonna wanna touch and feel. They just will. COVID here has had a huge effect on it, driving more business to Walmart, Amazon. And Walmart is now becoming Amazon because they're doing a lot of stuff online now too. And this isn't just here, this is across the whole country. And, I don't know, things are gonna change.
Why does TJ Maxx limit that you can't have a restaurant next to it?
Well, it's just part of, they don't like to have the smell of food coming near their clothes.
Understandable.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
All right, I'm gonna recap, and then I'm gonna ask you, is there anything else you wanna add?
Okay.
I have 517-100 for governors, and no real dispute. I got 56-3 for Roman Chosen, and this is just building, and I didn't hear any real dispute. On DQ, I do hear a dispute. We're at 1.365, and you would like us to go to 600,000 on that. Taco Bell, building, you're at 730, 400 for the city, and you would like us to go to 570,000. The first, the city's got the building that's no longer there, valued at 600,000, applying the formula of 2575, which he's been using because land and whatever. I have you'd like us to come to the conclusion of 480. And then on the bigger property, which includes the land under Governor's, Aroma Joe's, the first that's been crushed, you want us to go collectively, land and buildings, to 7.3 million from 14,951.
Correct.
Now, you're not done your presentation. Anything else that you would like to add, either from your expert, your mall manager, or yourself, to convince us to go to those numbers?
Sure. Bill, I have a few questions for you. Can you hear me all right?
And
Okay. One, I'd just like to point out something from your report. The overall, this property has rents that are slightly above market, correct, on average?
yes,
Okay, but that's due to the fact that some of the pad sites and the anchor store are above market, but other pieces of the property are below market, right?
correct. We did an analysis and we compared the contract rents to what we felt that the space could achieve if it was available today or
Right.
as of April 1st, 2019.
Right,
And we determined that just over, the property as a whole was about 4% over market. For those spaces that were leased,
okay,
it was about 4% over market.
okay.
So, if you go into each particular lease, some leases might be slightly below market, others might be above market, but on average, we found that those encumbrances were about 4.5% over market.
And does it sound right, though, that the inline spaces, which make up most of the vacancy, are the ones that have been below market? If you don't recall, I can ask Mr. McIntyre that question.
Oh, are you, sorry. Yes, we concluded that they were below market, the three inline spaces. We also can point to why it would be potentially below market, and that's because of the fitness center. They're paying roughly about $6 per square foot. Fitness centers in general have difficulty paying what would ordinarily be considered a market rent, just because of their business model. And as a result, their rent would be below market. They probably didn't receive significant TI. So when you get a tenant like that will come in and start paying you rent, you're willing to give them a little bit of a discount. And the hope is that with the fitness center that you drive traffic a little bit to the center and maybe get some leasing momentum. It didn't really happen, but that's the idea behind getting a fitness center to your center.
Okay, and then I have, I'll lump this question into two big categories, but let you address them as you will, and I might have follow-up questions. You did a sales comparison analysis in your initial report, and then your supplement to that report provided a chart outlining replacement value, in comparison to the actual assessment. I'd like you to just speak to those two issues. First, on the sales comparison, did you see anything in specific properties that indicated that the assessment for this property is too high?
So just as a general commentary, the assessment that I found on the field cards, the property cards, appears to be based solely on the replacement cost. The replacement cost being essentially the cost to build that structure or improvements on the site as of April 1st, 2019. While that's beneficial to some extent to know what the cost is to build the building, it doesn't represent value. In our marketplace, we look at sales approach and the income approach. Those are the two most relied upon approaches by investors in the market. And while you consider the cost approach, the investors give very little weight to any conclusion via the cost approach because it's not a realistic price that someone's going to pay in the market, particularly for buildings that are older, because there's a lot of different types of obsolescence, whether it be economic obsolescence or functional obsolescence. So it renders that exercise almost useless. We look to the market in terms of, in the sales approach, what other properties are selling for in the region, basically. And what we try to do is find the best and strongest comparables to the subject property. We try to find older centers that might be suffering from high vacancy, that might have some pad sites, and we do our best to uncover what we can in the marketplace that is traded. So what you're forced to do is you're forced to use those sales that have actually occurred. While there might be 10 other properties somewhere throughout Maine that are identical to the subject, if they didn't sell, you can't draw any points of comparison. So what we did was we scoured the market. We looked for centers as close as possible to the subject in terms of physical condition, age, tenancy, vacancy, and we presented 5 transactions that we thought were relevant. Some of them were in Maine, 3 of them were in Maine, 1 was in New Hampshire, and 1 was in Massachusetts. They were built between the years of 1967 or 1962 to 1992. Most of them were relatively similar in size, and they all traded within the past, within 2 years of the April 1st, 2019 data value. Those sales, they came out on a range per square foot from $31.40 to as high as $136 per square foot, and that's per square foot of building area. So we went through the process, which is typical, where you make adjustments to those presented sales. You make adjustments for location, size, market conditions, physical condition, any economic factors, whether it be occupancy, the net operating income that the property is generating. And so we adjust those sales, and we did that in the report that the full-on report that we presented. And we came up with, that the value of the property on an as-is basis via the sales approach was roughly $10.8 million or $56 per square foot. That indicator falls in line with the range that was presented in the report, and the adjustments clearly explain why we adjusted sales for whatever reason it was, whether it be occupancy, size, or the physical condition.
Is that
So that's just one indicator of value. Yes.
Say that again, I didn't hear that.
Is that 10
Question?
value for everything, including
Yes.
DQ,
That was-
governors, everything? 10.
A cumulative valuation, yes. And I am, just for the board's convenience, I'm looking at page 76 of Exhibit C, I believe it is. Yes, that's the initial appraisal. So Bill, I'm looking at page 76 of your initial appraisal, and I wanted to talk about a couple of the comparable properties. One, I'm looking at comparable number 1. It's called the Colonial Marketplace in Standish, Maine. And if I read across that row, you tell me if I'm right or wrong, it looks to me that that property sold for about $86 per square foot.
Correct.
It had a net operating income of $7.33 per square foot.
Correct.
and it was 100% occupied.
Yes.
How does the $86 per square foot compare to what the subject property is assessed at per square foot?
The $86 per square foot is clearly higher, and there's a reason for it. It's 100% occupied. It's,
Right.
you know, it's got a long-term lease to Hannaford's, which we also have
But-
a lease to Hannaford's. But
I
the
think-
fact that it's 100% occupied and generating $7.33 per square foot on the entire square footage of the center is the main reason that, you know, that would trade at a higher value
Right,
compared
but
to, you know, what the
isn't-
subject would trade for.
Isn't the subject property assessed at $98 per square foot? Is that right? I'm talking about the assessed figure.
My assessment?
No, the assessor, the tax assessor's numbers.
Yes, correct. Yeah,
Right.
97.79.
Right, so the subject property is assessed at about almost $98 per square foot, but this other 100% occupied newer building in Standish sold for less per square foot.
Correct.
Okay.
So
And,
that would suggest that maybe the assessment for the subject property is higher than it should be.
right, how
You
would
have a
the,
you have a market transaction between unrelated parties, and someone's willing to pay $86 a square foot, and versus a property that's suffering from about 35% vacancy, built in, you know, 67, has, you know, tough time getting leased up, and, you know, certainly you'd want to be much lower.
okay, and then I'll ask you to look at comparable number 3, which is the Falmouth Shopping Center.
Yes?
And it looks to me that that sold for $103 per square foot,
Yeah?
and had a net operating income of $7.39 per square foot, which is again higher than the subject property, right?
Yes?
And it had a greater occupancy rate.
Yes? That's 89%.
But the sale price per square foot is not far off from the $98 per square foot of the subject, right?
It's, well, yeah, it's $103 per square foot, so yeah, it's roughly about the same.
Right.
For a center that, you know, has significant lease advantage in being 89% leased, generating a higher NOI per square foot at $7.39 per square foot. In a stronger market, Falmouth would be considered stronger than Ellsworth. And then also, on top of having the Shaw's lease, there's a new Ocean State job lot that was moving into the center itself.
Okay. And does that again suggest to you that the assessed value of the subject property is too high?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I want to ask you, follow up on my question about replacement value. It looks to me, I tried to do some math based on your supplement, that the total replacement value based on the assessor's tax cards, including land, comes to about $21,287,000 and 234. I hope that sounds correct. So a little over $21 million with the land.
No, the assessor's total assessed value,
No,
The
the
entire
assessors, I'm sorry, the calculations on replacement value.
the replacement value, they have a value of $17,590,000, yes. So
And then-
yeah, if you were to add the $17,590,000, if you were to add the $3 million in the land value for the Dairy Queen, yes, you'd be up at, what was the number you said?
Almost 21.3 million.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Do you see any way that the value of this subject property could only be $3 million less than it would cost to build a brand-new facility on this land?
No, it doesn't really hold water because of the age of the center. It was built, the majority of the center, let's speak to, it was built in 1967, And so it's an older structure. There's a lot of functional obsolescence. So if you were to rebuild that center today, in reality, you wouldn't even build a center that big. And it wouldn't have the same configuration. It wouldn't have the floor plan that Ames had. That's outdated. It's, you can't lease that space, and that's, why it's suffering. Half of that is still vacant today. And so really the replacement cost doesn't really provide a good indicator of what we call market value, which is what the property would really trade for on the open market today.
And from a cost perspective, the cost approach, was it your testimony that it's just too speculative to try to calculate factors like obsolescence and depreciation?
Yeah, typically what we find, in addition to investors not relying on that approach, it's very difficult to kind of adjust for a variety of factors, including physical depreciation, economic obsolescence, functional obsolescence. You can't draw that information from the market as well as you can from the sales approach and the income approach. There's hard evidence in both of those approaches, sales and income approach, of how investors act and behave in the marketplace. With the cost approach, the adjustments that you have to make, you can't extract from the market because it's specific to the subject property, and really no investor is going in looking at the cost approach saying, okay, I've determined that the cost to replace the whole structure is $17.6 million, and I need to apply 23% functional obsolescence. They just don't go in and do that. It's not relevant. So while they might consider it, they don't consider it a useful tool to value the property.
Okay. Unless the board has more questions for him, I have a couple from Mr. McIntyre.
Present it, sir.
Okay. So, Mr. McIntyre, just a couple of questions. There were some questions at the outset of this hearing about whether the current assessed figures are figures that have been in existence for a while or if they are new. Do you recall the discussion about there being a settlement in 2014 that had an agreed-to value?
Yes, that's when the two sisters, the majority shareholders, took over the thing. They went into an abatement with Mr. Gardner here. And they were not aware of what this industry is. They just had a struggle taking it back from another one. And so I guess they thought, after getting an offer of $11.2 million for the property, they said, okay, 13, we're not gonna fight the valuation at 13. In retrospect, they thought that included the whole property, because the property was, that's what the whole offer was for all, 11.2 for all of the pad sites, including the main part. But, no spilled milk, so keep going.
Okay. And Bill, from your perspective, would a agreed-to value, agreed upon for settlement purposes in 2014, have any bearing on value as of April 1, 2019?
We were more occupied back then. I'm sorry.
Asking Bill. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
No,
Okay.
no, I don't think it would, because it wouldn't reflect what happens in the marketplace from the date that the agreement was struck. So the market could have gone up significantly. The property could have been, all the space absorbed and leased to great tenants, and the value would go up. Or, potentially the value would decline if, in fact, the building got older, was not, properly taken care of, had deferred maintenance, and then continued to have leasing issues. It would be expected that the property's value would probably decline. So a value established 5 years earlier does not represent what the market value is as of April 1st, 2019.
And Mr. McIntyre, what were you saying about the conditions of the property in 2014?
We had more tenants in place at that time also, so it did show a better NOI back then, so. But since then, it's suffered.
And does the assessment of April 1, 2019, the one we're challenging here tonight,
Correct.
Can you just talk about how that impacts your ability to conduct business?
It's tough. I mean, money's tight, and, we've got like a lot of paving to do in the next year or two. That parking lot's really starting to suffer. It's another $500,000 that's gonna have to be spent there. It's just deferred maintenance. But when the taxes go up, we're being the largest tenant because of our vacancy issue. We're the ones that have to pony that up. So it just gets tighter and tighter and tighter. So. No, not right yet.
You wanna take a break?
Yes,
heard
I think
take a
that's
break.
all we have. We can we'll have a chance to read.
Why don't we take a 5-minute break, 10 if we need it,
Yep.
15,
Who wants one?
All right, we're in break. Can we turn the back? It's 8:26. Now, for Union River Associates Realty Holdings LLC, we've had your presentation. You've had a chance to review your notes. Anything else you'd like us to hear from you, present, or are you comfortable with your presentation?
We're comfortable. Obviously, we'd like to reserve a right to respond to
You'll-
the assessor's
You
position.
will always have the right to respond. If during his monologue or whatever, questioning, if you want to add points and Larry doesn't mind, I don't mind the exchange if it's on a point, back and forth, it gets the point across. So Larry, you caused this problem. I'm going to go through just the way I did. Do you want an opening statement to clarify your position? Or do you want to tell us anything before you present why you feel you're right?
Can counsel for Mr. Gardner make a opening statement of
Absolutely,
sorts?
absolutely. If you want to do it there or at the podium, it's your call.
Whatever's your pleasure.
You do it with your pleasure.
I've got a microphone, but I can't speak with this thing on. The beauty of these masks is I can see everybody's eyes glazing over. It's the focus from here. The chair was right. The assessment is presumed correct, and the appellants have the burden of proof to demonstrate that the assessment is manifestly wrong. In this point, at this context, they're arguing that it is substantially overvalued. There's been a lot of talk about vacancy tonight, and I think I can simplify things for you. The appraisal, Exhibit C, that the parties rely on is a least fee appraisal, okay? I'm not even going to throw any numbers, just words. A least fee value is determined by capitalizing the income produced by actual lease payments, okay? Actual lease payments. That's what they've argued, that the value ought to be based on actual lease payments. In contrast, there's something called fee simple value, which is based on not actual lease payments, but market lease payments, okay? So I want to run through a really quick example. Mr. Salisbury and I each own a shopping center. They're absolutely identical, except Mr. Salisbury is a great business person. He's invested in improvements along the way. There's no deferred maintenance. He's marketed his property, and he is not holding out for the golden goose. He's holding out for, he's willing to make changes, be flexible with who comes in, and as a result, every month, he gets a total revenue of $100,000 in lease payments, okay? I'm not nearly as smart as Mr. Salisbury. I've made a number of, I'm gonna hold out for the golden goose. I've kind of let things slide. I bought the property from somebody who didn't do much to it. I just, it's not terribly attractive. I haven't updated it, haven't done much maintenance. I've let the parking lot fall into disrepair. It's not particularly attractive. Tenants are looking elsewhere, but I'm holding out for that big one, okay? My vacancy rate is higher. as a result of my business decisions, I only get $50,000 a month. Okay? Good business, same shopping center, $100,000. Same business, poor business decision, same shopping center, $50,000. So if we value the property based on that, the actual lease payments, Mr. Salisbury's property is going to be valued much higher. His vacancy is higher, his lease payments are higher, everything is going good for him, but his valuation is going to be higher because he makes more every year on the same property. So he's penalized. He's penalized for his business acumen. I, on the other hand, make these terrible decisions. I get half of what Mr. Salisbury gets, and consequently, my value is reduced, and I pay less in taxes. If this is the reason that assessors don't use leased value, and if you don't believe me, let me point to the Maine Supreme Court. This is what the Maine Supreme Court says. Use of the lease value imposes an unequal tax on taxpayers who own the same or similarly situated property but manage it differently. It inherently discriminates against owners who use property to its best potential and treats the same property differently depending on the owner's business practices. To allow business acumen to form the controlling basis for property tax assessment would obliterate the principal concept of consistency. All right? You don't believe me? You don't believe the Maine Supreme Court that this isn't the appropriate method to use? Let's look at the appraiser that the property owner had back in 2014. Ted Weberson, who completed that appraisal back in 2012, 2013, says, and I quote, "Although the property is leased and defined as leased fee estate under the real estate appraiser profession, taxing authorities require that a fee simple value be used."
Is that in our record?
It is in the record now. Yes, it is. I think it's in the packet that I gave appraiser number 1.
I do not have a copy of that, and I think it's important that I do, because I think it's being,
Well, if he's gonna argue 2012, you need to have it. Is it in this assessor's one?
I think it's cited in there, yes.
can I get a copy of this?
Take mine.
Did I not hand you that when I?
Yeah.
Oh.
You want mine?
Oh, you wrote it for the most part.
Now, if you want some time to digest this after presentation,
I'm fine, but I just need a copy.
What did I do with it?
here,
I had a
Ted,
ton of
take
copies.
mine.
No.
Take mine, I can steal another one.
My point is that you can't look at actual lease payments as the measure. You have to look at market, okay? If you look at actual, then you're gonna penalize the good businessman and you're gonna reward the poor business decision maker.
I just gotta,
The
I'm sorry, I hate to cut you off, but this didn't have a copy of the case you were citing. I don't know if you have a copy of that. But
Yes.
continue, go ahead.
Yes, I will make sure that's in the, I will make sure that's in the record, absolutely. Probably, I assume, I could be wrong, but the addendum that was presented tonight purports to be a market assessment, all right? But if you look at it, and it's in...
You're talking F, right?
What's that?
You're talking about F?
Talking about F, that was
Collins F.
correct. This does the same thing. Instead of lease payments, it uses existing vacancy as the measure instead of market vacancy, okay? If you look on page in the chart, the third chart that sort of has been the focus of this evening, there's a vacancy factor of 35%, okay? That may be the actual vacancy of that building. Though the earlier assessment says, or the earlier appraisal says it was 33%, but regardless, 33, 35%, that is the actual vacancy. But our position is you can't use actual, you have to use market vacancy. And if you look at page 97 of the appraiser's report, he says the current vacancy, and this is Exhibit C, he says the current vacancy rate is 33%. But the local vacancy rate is 10%. All right? So that's the value, that's the percentage that should be used. Otherwise, you are rewarding bad managerial decisions.
How much was this property bought for in 2014?
Didn't sell.
It
How
didn't
much?
sell, no.
There's not been a sale, just been transferred between LLCs and holdings? Okay.
So as we talk this tonight, I hope this board focuses on the fact that we shouldn't be talking about actual
You're
things.
arguing that the methods they're
It's-
using as opposed to the method Larry's using are the difference.
And they have failed to carry their burden. By using the least value approach, they have failed to carry their burden to demonstrate that the assessment is manifestly wrong. And for that reason, I don't think we even need to get into the numbers, because they, as you indicated to the board at the outset, it's a two-step process. First, they must demonstrate that the property is substantially overvalued.
Well, I
And
wanna know
only
where
then
we-
do we get to the numbers
Well,
discussion.
we need to know how Larry got his numbers. We're gonna hear about that. That's for sure. I disagree with you on that one. Anything else you'd like to say in opening?
One more thing. The goal of property tax valuation assessment is uniformity and equality. The appraiser, Mr. McLaughlin, found, well, he cites 5 comparable properties in the city of Ellsworth. Ellsworth Shopping Center, Acadia Crossing, 25 Eastward Lane, and Ellsworth Family Outlet Center. The appraiser found that the valuation of the subject property resulted in taxes per square foot of $1.78. Taxes per square foot, $1.78 for the subject property. The appraiser also found that with comparable properties, that the tax rate fluctuates or is in a range of $1.16 per square foot to $1.93 per square foot, with an average at $1.53, okay? So this property, the valuation or taxes per square foot, which working backwards would also be valuation per square foot, is well within the average of similarly situated properties in Ellsworth. And quoting the assessor, or quoting the appraiser, based on these comparables, the subject is generally commensurate with comparable properties. To me, that says it all. I'll turn it over to Larry.
Larry, do you want to say anything before I deluge you with questions?
Well, just to reiterate, the thing the assessor has to do in any town is to make sure that there's no bias towards, no special preference towards anyone, so that the same treatment, the same appraisal methods is applied to everyone fairly. And that's what I have to do, that's what I've done here. One of the, I think it's the Dairy Queen property, the building permit itself for that Dairy Queen was $650,000. The assessed value I have for that building is less than the permitted estimated cost. So it's not that far off. I think I have 630 on it, and their permit was for 650, and that's just.
You have 667.
And that's just an estimated cost. Who knows what all the other singular costs would have been that were not part of the estimate on the permit. But, yes, and I think you were right at the very beginning to question, you know, if that entire property, it's almost 5 acres of land there, is assessed at $600,000, well, they've just got a permit to build an estimated building permit cost of $650,000.
Can I go through these?
So it's
Can I just go through these? Look, we've got Governor's, what's it called, Roma Joe's, Taco Bell, and the First, all have building-only values. And then we have DQ and the mall, which have land and building values. Why is the Governor's value on the building only of 517 correct?
Well, that's what it would be at its market value replacement cost minus depreciation for that structure. And we also look at, we did consider the income approach to that property as well. And we also compared it to other properties in town that have sold. I don't know if the appellants have looked at the sale of where you've got the, what is it, the dental place and the mattress place.
Yeah.
Some big building construction costs, plus I think they paid $1.2 million for that.
Well, why is 517 correct? Right to the point.
Because that's what it would cost, that's what the market value would be if you looked at the, all three approaches.
You're saying the Governor's building's worth at least 517?
Yes, the building value, yes.
Okay.
And that's, I'm sorry, can I follow up on that?
Please, let's do them one at a time.
Yep.
And you get your questions in one at a time.
Just because you said all three approaches, is that the same value you arrived at under each approach?
No, it would differ.
What were the other approaches?
I don't have that in front of me, but, you know, that's,
Well, how do we know they supported your conclusion then?
well, the assessor has to make sure that all the assessed values are commensurate with other properties in
You
town.
recall several months ago when you submitted a list of questions to us, I believe in May, that I submitted a Freedom of Access Act request, right? Asking you for all documents indicating how you arrived at value. And I'll represent, I never received anything indicating a sales comparison approach or an income capitalization approach was performed. Do you have any documents that reflect what those analyses showed?
I don't have a spreadsheet of that, no.
Do you have anything that shows that?
Not tonight, no, not at this table.
But you have them, you just didn't provide them to me.
I may have information. It's, you know, with the COVID-19 and with the tax bills going out, this is not the perfect time.
Ted, I get your point.
Okay.
If you want to go and once we're done our presentation, ask him for more information, come back another night, we can.
Okay.
That's an option. I don't
Okay.
want to foreclose you from taking on Larry any chance you get, but, you know,
Okay.
if you feel that you need more information to question him based on a legitimate request, I know you both had requests to each other, we can come back another night, so.
That's all I wanted to ask for now. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'll
No, no, no,
continue.
I would prefer to do it this way, one parcel at a time, so we get the record right.
Yep.
But if you later feel we need more time, we can take it, okay?
Thank you.
Anything else, Larry, you want to add on the $517,000 value for governors?
No, we're good.
Building only. You good?
We're good.
Let's go to Roma Joe's. You valued the building only at 56.3. How'd you get that value?
It's the same approach, replacement costs minus depreciation, and we looked at what the rent would be per square foot and capitalized that with an income approach.
And I don't think they really questioned that one so much, 'cause I didn't hear him, but you did the same analysis, right?
Yep.
All right, let's go on. You have any questions, Ted?
Just that same question I had before, but I assume the answer is the same, so I'm
He
fine.
didn't give you anything as far as comparables
For any of the properties.
for preserved, and
Right.
fair is fair. We can come back if you need
Got
to.
it. Yep, I'm fine.
Taco Bell, the big building. You valued the building Taco Bell KFC $730,400. How'd you get that?
The Taco Bell has a, it's pretty much brand new, so that you reference to the building cost on the building permits, but you also appraise it just like you would any other property, because of the replacement, the building estimated cost on the building permit could be less or more than what it's actually worth. So we look at that replacement cost minus depreciation. We also looked at the income approach for that as well. And we compared the Dairy Queen to Burger King, McDonald's, Wendy's, the fast food restaurants, to make sure they were all uniformly assessed.
So you look at the individual picture and then the global picture.
Yes.
Anything else you want to add about the Taco Bell assessment of $730,400?
No, that's it.
Any questions, Ted?
I'm confused there, because I thought the other guys used the income approach.
Ted, you want any questions? Same questions about,
Yeah, I'm fine. Go ahead. You're still walking through each parcel, right?
yep.
Okay.
And then the next one I'm going to go to is the first, which has been raised, tore down, cleared out, but back a year ago, before it was, you had valued the building, the brick building that was the bank, at $600,400. How did you come across that number? Because I know that's an older building.
Yeah, that,
With a
as of,
vault.
yep, as of April 1st, 2019, that bank was still in operation. And so the valuation had been based on, just like the other properties, replacement cost new minus depreciation, and looking at what a bank would rent for, using the income approach, and then comparing that to other bank properties in towns to make sure that it was uniformly assessed as other properties are assessed.
Okay. Now, all four properties I just talked about, they did not include valuations for land underneath them. Why?
Well, there's only two parcels, Lot 7 and Lot 4. And then you have the awns. The awns are the pad site buildings. The pad sites are tenants of the property of Lot 7. And so they're just two land parcels, so therefore just two land assessments.
Does the land assessment, I know I'm jumping around here, for 7 include the Cellular One building and land too?
Yes,
That's not challenged, but that's included in your assessment for lot 128/7, correct? You've included Cellular One.
It included all the land, the actual, I think the US Cellular one was not actually assessed as a pad site area as of April 1st, 2019.
Is that included in your assessment for the buildings of $11,951,700? for the parcel? You got 3 million?
No,
Well, why aren't we seeing any assessment for US Cellular?
I don't think it was there at the
That was a
time.
question.
they own the building.
They own it, so they get a separate tax bill?
Yeah,
All right, but the land underneath it's owned by our appellants,
it's on lot 7.
and that's taxed, you've included a value.
It's part of that $3
So the
million.
reason, all right, so that's the clarification, the building is owned separately.
Yeah.
So that's just a personal property tax, Larry?
It's a real property tax, but they also pay, also a personal property tax.
Now, DQ, and then the bigger parcel. Addressing DQ first, this is parcel number 128-4/4. You have land, 697,200, buildings, 667,800, for a total value for that one piece, 1.365 million. How did you, that's a lot.
Yeah.
How'd you get there?
Yeah, you've got almost 5 acres there of prime commercial property. And it's one of the best locations in the city of Ellsworth. It's right beside McDonald's. Of course, it does have Dairy Queen now on the site. So that is the, if you're looking at land value in Ellsworth, for downtown on High Street in that area, you're probably looking like close to $300,000 an acre. If you wanted to just buy a good 1 acre commercial land property. So it's based on, the land's based on the market value of what it would be here in Ellsworth, where it is located.
How many total acres is it for that one piece?
I think it's close to 5.
5. Now that, just visually speaking, just past McDonald's, it goes all the way back, and then, but that's not developed.
No, and there's.
That was the point they made. It's not developed, it's carrying costs,
Yeah.
it's not rentable, it's not usable. Once you take the front piece out, have you taken that into consideration?
Well, on the internet, they've been marketing 2 pad sites back there. That was not considered, I did not assess those 2 pad sites as part of the land value. I perhaps could and should assess those, or look at the effect of those 2 pad sites behind Dairy Queen. I have not done that.
Would that increase or decrease the assessment?
That would have to increase the assessment. One of the things I was asking the code enforcement officer, if you're showing a division of land on the internet marketing property, two pieces of land like these are being marketed on the website, do you have to have subdivision approval for that? And he says, yes, you do. So those pad sites being marketed right now are in violation of our land use ordinance.
But we don't really care because we hope they bring business. Correct?
We don't what?
We don't care because we want them to bring business. It's a good business model. Hopefully, he develops it. I mean, everybody's interested, right? But you come up with nearly 700,000 for the land,
Yeah,
5 acres.
yeah.
And,
Well, like I said,
anyway, it could be less than that?
well, like I said, a good 1 acre, right there in that area is worth $300,000.
Oh, but that would be frontage.
Oh, a good 1 acre, but, you've got to have, the bigger the property, the bigger the structure and use you could put on it.
That was a car dealership which was paved and they had all kinds of cars parked there. You foresee that going back in there?
And they paid $1.2 million for it when they purchased it. How
Who
much
did?
is it assessed now?
Who did?
We did.
You dispute that?
I think that was 2012. No, that was actually 2009, 2008.
Was that empty? May I digress to ask, was it empty at that time? Was the car dealership gone?
The car dealership was still there. It was a kind of a weird type of a deal. They were supposed to stay there. If they didn't stay there, they were supposed to pay the mortgage for 3 years.
but there was a loophole that they got out of there, so they only paid mortgage for 1 month.
You bought a car dealership essentially,
Exactly.
and you didn't get one.
We bought a tenant
You bought a tenant that didn't
that
stay.
didn't stay.
Does that affect your value, Larry?
Well, they tore the building down
Right?
and built Dairy Queen.
How much did Dairy Queen cost to build according to records?
Estimated on the building permit,
Right.
about $650,000. And that's
Okay.
just what we have on the building permit. There would be electrical, there'd be plumbing fees,
Well, you're talking 650 to 700 if everything's done right
Yeah.
and on time, right?
yeah,
So that's the cost of a brand-new DQ
yeah,
there.
yeah.
Is that how you get a building of 6, 7, 800?
Yeah,
That's your assessed
yeah,
value?
I'm right up there with values, assessed values in Ellsworth are commensurate with, we try to stay with the market if we can. There certainly may be times as, if real estate takes off really, really fast, it's gonna be hard to stay with it. But I try to look at it, if there's a trend in real estate values, I try to stay with it. Maybe just increasing 1% a year sometimes, not wait until they're, we go 10, 15 years and then do a massive revaluation and increase everything 15, 20, 30%. So I try to stay with the market, so I should be very close to market value.
Well, you
with
see all
the
sales,
assessed value.
is there anything selling now?
There's properties that have, yeah, oh my goodness. Brand new properties are selling. I think we're starting to see, because of the COVID-19, people move up here to Maine, and Ellsworth is not a bad place to be. And,
All right, now, let's go to the big board, Bob, here. 128.7, the big property. How did you get $3 million for the land?
Well, that was actually an agreement we made back in 2014.
Who was that agreement with?
That was with the owners at the time.
You know, listen, I'm not spilling any beans here. It was been raised by everybody. I was not gonna bring this up, but since it's part of the record, and you guys, tell me about that agreement.
Well, the owners applied for a tax abatement. They had the property appraised by a Mr. Weberson, an appraiser in Blue Hill. I think he's retired now.
He is.
And I think he came in at 8.9 in his appraisal. And we were heading to the Board of Assessment Review when we met with the appraiser Weberson and Doug Chapman, the attorney at the time, in Bar Harbor. And we decided to settle at 13.7, which of course did not include the pad site buildings.
Okay. But that was a compromised value. Was it the same parties?
Yeah.
That's still now?
Yeah.
Correct.
Same entity.
It's the same entity?
Correct.
All right.
And
so-
I might also mention that was the agreed upon value back then at 13.7 without the building pad sites. But of course, since that agreement, there's been $7.6 million put into the property via cost on the building permits.
That would be Hannaford Brothers 4 million that improved their look, but did it improve the value of the property?
Well, if you put $7.6 million into a property, you're doing more than just improving the look.
Well, no, let's be realistic. You can spend endlessly on a property and it doesn't increase in value. I mean, he's made the point. He had to renegotiate with Hannaford's, and they spent a ton of money to make that place look the way
I
it does now.
cannot agree to just overlook $7.6 million in added value via building permits. That would be, that would be something that, yeah.
Does it actually increase the value of the building?
Well, not 7.7. I haven't increased it, $7.6 million. I think I've only increased it maybe $3.5 million.
Okay. Well, I want to know how the land got picked at 3 million. Was that just plucked out of the air, or was it some analysis done?
Well, yeah, we look at the, it's the same for every property in town. We look at all the sales of all the properties, and we determine what that land value should be. A lot of the properties will be already improved, so we use the replacement cost minus depreciation, apply that to the building value, subtract it from the total sale price value, and what's left over would be an indicator of land value. And that's what we've done since 2007, when we did the revaluation. And we've kept pretty much, there's really been no major shifts in land value anywhere in town since the revaluation in 2007.
11.9 for buildings, 11,000,009. How did you get that figure?
Back to the replacement cost minus depreciation. We looked at the income approach, market, fee simple approach, direct capitalization, and we also looked at other sales of other properties in town to come into that value.
Did you take into consideration improvement at Shaw's to increase the value?
Did Charles get an increase in assessment?
Not Shaw's, I'm sorry, Hannaford's. Hannaford spent a ton of money improving their property. Did that make this evaluation go up?
There was some increase in value.
It looks good, by the way.
Yeah, I think of the total improvements per building permit since the agreement we had in 2014, is 7.6 million, and I think maybe half of that is what I've added to the assessed value.
Okay. Anything else you want to say about how you got your numbers?
I don't think I'm in there. I'm good.
Anything else you want to add?
Nope.
Ted,
I do have some
have
questions.
at him.
What cap rate did you apply in your analysis?
I believe it's less than 10 or around 10.
A cap rate of around 10?
Mhm.
And that's for the income capitalization approach?
Yeah, I can get you that direct information.
Can I ask a question? You used 8.5 in your assessment.
8.5.
And he
That's pretty
used 10.
high.
What's the difference?
If it goes up, the value goes down.
All right.
Bill, do you
So
want to,
if he's going at a 10,
Bill, do you want to chime in on that?
I kind of want to know what that means.
Yeah, can you explain the,
So, the capitalization rate is simply the rate, the NOI divided by the sale price. So basically, we look to the market to see what other properties sold for, what the NOI was at the time of sale, and you get your resulting cap rate. So you look to the market and try to, find similar properties and what they sold for and what the resulting cap rate was. So if it was, we found that for the subject property at 8.5% would be appropriate. I'm not sure, if the assessor is using a 10, that would suggest a lower value. I'm not sure what comparables he may have used or how did he arrive at that 10% rate. If he did, it would suggest that he must have had higher rents than we had concluded to. So I'm not clear. I never saw any of that analysis. It's not on the public record card that we received. So it's hard to understand where he got his rate of 10% and what kind of rents he imputed for the property as a whole
what rents did you?
and for the individual
Well,
spaces.
one of the things you have to do for assessing, which is different from bank appraising and just appraisal of commercial property in general, it's different than assessing. For assessing purposes, you have to use what's called a loaded cap rate.
Yeah.
which you would not be using the actual taxes that a property pays as an expense. You would take the effective tax rate of the property and add that to the tax rate, the discount rate, to get into a cap rate it's called a loaded cap rate, so that for assessing purposes, the cap rates are usually a little higher than bank appraisal.
What did you have for rents?
I understand that concept that you're suggesting, the loaded cap rate, and that's most appropriate when you have gross leases where the tenant is not paying for any of the expenses that the building has. But when you have net leases, you don't have to load the cap rate. There's no need to do that because technically, if the property's leased at market on a triple net basis, the tenant's absorbing that real estate tax, not the landlord. So there's no need to load the cap rate. But if you, for example, most office buildings are leased on a gross basis, that's the case when you would deduct out the taxes to figure out what your NOI was and then load that cap rate to get to your value. So it depends on how the leases are structured.
What was the rent figure that you arrived at?
I'm right in around $10 a square foot here in Ellsworth, and one of the things that I think was reviewed by your appraiser. I'm sorry, what's his name?
Bill?
Bill
McLaughlin?
Bill McLaughlin,
Yeah.
Mr. McLaughlin, was he's using a 10 roughly for Ellsworth, which is what I use. But I think the average when you look at the Main Coast Mall, it's a little better than average. You would think the Mill Mall would be getting around the $10 a square foot for rent, but the Main Coast Mall should be getting a little more than that.
So, to that point, the fact that
Can
the
I
main,
just interject here for a second? We were at one point, back in the day, getting over $18 a square foot. Now we get $10 and under a square foot.
that's an average.
Yeah.
Doesn't the fact that the mall gets, on average, slightly above market for rent suggest that a fee simple analysis would result in a lower figure than a least fee analysis?
Well, you would have to consider your appraiser.
I'm
Your
just
appraiser.
asking you a question.
I know,
I'm
but
not
you-
asking what my appraiser did.
No,
I'm asking
let
you-
me answer the question. Your appraiser has said he's using a fee simple appraised value on this last piece of paper he sent in today. But he's using a 35% vacancy rate. Well, then you would have, if 35% is the market vacancy for Ellsworth, Maine, that would be correct. But it's not.
I appreciate,
He is loading, he's lowering the value, he's lowering the income approach by saying there's a 35% vacancy rate in Ellsworth, and there's not. And it's around 10%.
I
So
appreciate.
just that alone, if you would change the 35% to 10, you would get a tremendous amount of value added to the property.
I appreciate that answer, but it's not the answer to, it's not answering the question I asked.
Oh, I'm sorry, what
The
was?
question I asked was, doesn't the fact that the mall gets, on average,
Yeah.
rents that are above market suggest to you that a market analysis would result in a lower figure than a least fee analysis? A fee simple analysis would result in a lower figure. I'm not talking about numbers my appraiser came to. I'm just talking about as a general philosophical principle.
Well,
If the lease,
you're just reiterating what Roger said earlier. If you're getting higher than market rent and using that as your income approach, then you're appraising the least fee.
again.
It's just the same as if you were if your rents were lower than market and you're using those lower rents, you're using lease fee. So yes, if you use a higher than market rent, than market, not for the property, market rent is not something you, let's say you have, market rent for a particular property is not average rent for the entire community. My analysis tells me that $10 a square foot is about average for the city of Ellsworth. It may not be $10 a square foot for every property in town.
Again, I don't think you're answering my question, and I'm gonna try to make it really simple. You said you had a rent figure of $10 per square foot.
Yeah,
Okay. If a property, like the mall, let's just say it's a different property, it's the same type of property,
yeah,
if it is actually getting above market rent,
yeah.
under a leased fee analysis, you would expect that the value would come in higher than a fee simple analysis would give you, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
That's what I just said.
okay. And is it your position that the only thing that matters is that each similarly situated property is taxed in an equal way, regardless of whether the assessed value reflects just value or not?
Well, you have to look at the property itself, the building components, the elements that make up the property. It's like I just said about the income, that in Ellsworth, the average rent per square foot is $10 a square foot. But what are you renting COVID, or not COVID, convenient MD? That's, what, $36 a square foot that's gonna rent for?
Yeah, after putting,
But I guess my question is this. Does it matter if an assessment is above just value, so long as all properties are treated equal? Or is it your position that?
No, no.
What do you mean no? So it's plain what? So as long as they're treated equally, it doesn't matter if they're above just value? Is that what your position is?
If your assessment is above just value, it's incorrect.
Okay. So you're not suggesting here that the simple fact that this property may be assessed in a manner similar to other properties is all that the board needs to consider. If the board finds that the assessed value is above just value, then that's what matters, right?
Exactly,
Right.
but I've been able to present evidence, and I have, we haven't been through hardly any of this information. One of the things about this particular property is that it has multiple pad sites, which makes a difference. You look at any other, I don't know if you can find a mall type plaza type property in the state of Maine, anywhere, that has this many pad sites. Did you know that the McDonald's pays $50,000 a year just for the rights to use, to travel through? And they have a few parking spots around McDonald's actually owns their land. But they pay $50,000 a year. So that makes a difference. Pad sites make a difference. They attract customers. They'll attract customers into the mall, and that was not a consideration really in that I saw, where there was a,
It is in fact in the appraisal.
yeah, where it made a difference.
Any other questions, Ted?
I don't believe so. I'm checking one thing.
All right, does
Yeah,
the,
no more questions of
does
Mr.
the city wish to present anything else on the appraisals, or anything else in general, or anything else
Well, I just want to reiterate that the thick appraisal presented up until tonight was a least fee appraisal report. Tonight you get a, was it 5-page report that changes that. Oh, let's not use the least fee, let's do it correctly.
Let's go back to the other one.
Let's look at fee simple now. And then even though they use fee simple, for fee simple, you can't use exact vacancy rates for the property. You have to use market vacancy rate for the property.
You mean actual?
Actual. So instead of 35, they use 35% for his fee simple appraisal, and it should be around 10. That's significant.
Okay. Can I,
Yes,
we have some quick response here?
yes.
I wanna make a-
Okay, wait, let me just,
Yep.
is the city done presenting evidence?
I believe so, yes.
Anything you want to put in the record that is not in the record, that needs to be in the record from your perspective? I would like the case you cited, I would like the other thing, and then I want to address issues after you present rebuttal.
Yep.
It's your turn, take your time, take whatever you want, you're expert, whatever. But after we're done, I want to address discovery issues that have been raised.
Okay, I just wanted to respond briefly to Roger's brief opening statement and then follow up with some questions of our witnesses. Sorry, I don't have the benefit of the copy of the case that Roger cited. I'm sure I looked at it before I came here and should have brought a copy and did not. But I think what a full reading of that case would indicate is that Maine Supreme Court has indicated that, use the language that Roger cited, except in the context of situations where least fee and fee simple result in different results. And that is not actually the case here. In fact, if anything, the purpose of this fee simple analysis that was provided was to show essentially the benefit of the least fee analysis, in that, as the assessor himself acknowledged, if you have rents that are above market, your lease fee is going to result in a number that's higher than the fee simple analysis. And that's what this supplement shows. We have a property here that on average gets above market lease rates. And what that means is that the lease fee analysis resulted in a higher figure than the fee simple analysis. There's no prohibition on that. In fact, you know, the standard, to go back to the opening of this hearing, is that we need to present quote-unquote credible evidence that the assessor's numbers are wrong. That can be a lot of different things. Once credible evidence is introduced to raise that suspicion or doubt or conclusion in the board's mind, the board then engages in an independent analysis of the value. What the law court, Maine Supreme Court, has said is that when the board does that, it can't rely solely on a least fee analysis if it results in numbers that are different from a fee simple analysis. Well, we're not in any of those realms right now. And here's why. First off, the original appraisal and the supplemented appraisal present more than credible evidence that the assessment was wrong, did not represent just value. And even if you don't want to get into the least fee and the fee simple analysis, you can look at the sales comparisons that are in the original appraisal that show that the assessor has assessed this property to be worth more on a per square foot value than a newer building in Cumberland County that is 100% occupied. He has assessed it to be essentially on par with value of a property in Falmouth, which we can probably all agree is one of the best markets in Maine, that is more occupied than this property. And going beyond that, we can use the assessor's own calculations for replacement costs. It's not clear to me that he reached a determination of value for the land based on anything other than the prior settlement agreement. Maybe I have that wrong, but that's kind of how I interpreted the testimony. But if you add that to his replacement figures, replacement cost figures, that gets you to approximately $21 million. That's for a brand-new facility. Brand new, without all the obsolescent problems, the age problems, the need to refit out property spaces, all the problems that this property has. $21 million, brand spanking new. And he says the value of this older property is over 18 million. Essentially the same as building a brand-new facility, which really strains the limits of credulity. That in and of itself.
18,220,400 is what I came up with.
That's,
If you add them all up. what do you
I'll
think?
defer to your math. But that alone, the fact that the assessor says that this property is basically worth what it would cost to build this brand new, strongly suggests that the assessment does not represent just
This is
value.
more argument, which we can do, but
Yep.
do you have any more evidence you'd like to
I
present?
do, I have some testimony I want to elicit.
Thank you.
If I can read my notes. I want to talk, Mr. McIntyre, you heard the assessor talk about alleged marketing of separate pad sites. Tell us what that's about.
Okay, there's a thing when you're in commercial real estate where you go on to this thing called LoopNet. Everybody that's looking for property, commercial tenants go there to look for commercial properties to rent and lease. So you put up your site plan, and so there it shows where the Dairy Queen is and that loop road that comes back. So we put up, okay, development potential, possibly 2 pad sites, maybe 1, who knows, you know? We'll build a suit or whatever, but it's never been marketed for sale. It's only for lease. It's still the same piece of property, so.
But the zoning ordinance disallows you to have a diagram for leasing land as well, like that. In the ordinance itself,
I'm not gonna get into the
Yeah.
legalities of this. The point he's trying to make is, if it's leased, it's marketed differently, and if it's owned, it's
Correct.
marketed differently. That's, I think, the point he's trying to make.
but we have to go
And how he's
by,
done it is,
no, but we have to go by the land use ordinance. If the land use ordinance disallows him to do this, he shouldn't be doing it.
Even if that's true, I don't know what it has to do with the assessed value. So-
right. I just-
Well, because
listen,
I did
nobody's-
not, I did not assess
Yeah.
these 2 pad sites you're marketing. I can,
You haven't added any value on for the marketing of those 2 pads.
I have not added any value. I can assess them today and go back 3 years with a supplement, so 4 years.
So if I take the line out of there,
Look, we're not
It's
gonna get into it.
Yes.
Yes.
Listen, I want this to end, right?
Yep.
That point is dead to me. It's not adding any value to this argument at all.
Yep.
But
Well, what it does, it shows you that
Larry, Larry,
the
Larry,
owners of this
Larry,
property may
enough.
go to a point
Larry.
where they don't
I said
care.
no. I don't wanna
They
hear it.
don't
It's not
care.
adding value.
No, I've got to say this, whether, if the owners are, if they don't care to comply with the land use ordinance, you know, that is just, so anybody else can do the same thing in the future. And I think that is wrong.
All right, good.
So,
Anything else you'd like to add?
yeah, I just want to ask Mr. McLaughlin a couple questions. Bill, can you explain the use of the 35% vacancy factor in your supplement?
Yeah, so when we look at the market, we not only look at the general market and, you know, overall vacancy of 10%, but we look at the individual buildings themselves. So if you look at my summary, I would state that the numbers are slightly distorted because if you look at Arcadia Crossing and the fact that they've got 2 major significant tenants representing like probably over 500,000 square feet, just 2 tenants, it makes the market appear stronger than it actually is. those properties are newer construction. If you look at the older properties in the marketplace, which there's not many, the problem with the subject property and the reason that you have to elevate the vacancy rate is because there's a ton of functional obsolescence. If you compare it to like the Shores Plaza, where there's Shores and you have a few stores there, those stores are basically 100 to 125 feet deep. If you look at the subject center where Ames used to be, that's over 260 feet deep. That whole back half of that building should be cut off and should not even be considered in the analysis. There's no chance you can rent that space, and so you need to lop that off in terms of the vacancy factor. If you look at any older center that's built in 1967 and had an Ames in it, it's suffering from the same issues. So just to go and apply a 10% vacancy, because that's what the market is, would be overstating the value of this property. And it has nothing to do with the other gentleman's argument about whether or not owner A takes care of his property and owner B doesn't. This property, based on its age, portions of it are functionally obsolete, and you can't rent that space. So to take a 10%, there's no chance that he could rent that back space for the $650 per square foot that I claimed that anchor space would get. So you need to take that vacancy allowance
So,
to be accurate and fair.
so you didn't simply say that the building is currently 33% vacant, so plug that number in. It was more of a
No, I
market
did not.
review.
I mean, it so happens that this property is suffering from a similar vacancy, but, if you look at other centers in the market, not just this market, because this is a smaller market in general, but older centers like this, if you were to look at an aerial of this property, you can tell that it's going to have leasing issues under current market conditions.
So
The
the,
zigs and the zags, it's just not very conducive to any tenants that are in the marketplace. If you look at all the new centers, they all have straight fronts that are perpendicular to the major roads. This one doesn't. And that's why it suffers from, higher vacancy. But any center that was built in this, period under the same type of floor plan would also have the similar issues.
So
So you need to
you're-
address that because otherwise you're going to be overstating the value.
the 35% you used was based on a market analysis.
It was based on, other things that I've seen in the marketplace, as well as my consideration to the functional obsolescence of the size of the property and the layout.
The 35% vacancy was market.
Do you want to ask some
What's that?
questions?
I do have just a couple of questions. You just testified that the 35% was based on the market. Do you know what the actual vacancy rate on the property is presently?
The subject property,
Yeah.
as of April 1st, 2019,
Correct.
it's in my report, but I can pull it up.
Isn't it
Does 33% sound right?
33, 35, close.
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, well, that's what your report says. Do you know what
Okay.
do you know what the local vacancy rate is? Also in your
Um,
report.
Well, it depends. When you say local vacancy rate, what we try to, highlight is other properties in the marketplace. And like I said, we highlighted some of the Shaw's facility, the Acadia Crossing, those. We didn't highlight all the small little, the little LL Bean facility, all the, the other little vacant stores, because those aren't entirely comparable to the subject. But if you were to expand it, like in a greater concept, even to Bangor, if you look at some of the vacancy in that market, that's very significant. If you look at the Bangor Mall, again, it's an old, outdated layout, and that's sold for $20 a square foot. So this is what's happening in the marketplace. When you're built in the 60s and you have a floor plan that no longer fits the new kind of retail type tenant, you're not going to be able to lease it up. There's not enough frontage to break up the space. It's too deep. So if it was actually longer and less depth, you could potentially lease it up. But with the depth of 260 feet, you can't rent that back space. Any investor today would look at that and probably not even include that square footage in the analysis. So, there's two ways to look at it, and I simply address the issue by elevating the vacancy rate.
Okay, well, let me just be more specific then. You've got you testified that 35% vacancy is based on market. Your report indicates that the actual vacancy rate was 33%, very close to 35, and your report indicates that the local vacancy rate is 10%. Is it,
Yeah, I don't know if you understood what I said.
no, I understood what you said, but I'm having a
A
hard...
Walmart Supercenter and a Home Depot representing probably like more than like 30% of the market, 40% of the market. So that's, you can't just rely on that. That's misleading and it's not accurate.
Well,
It's not how
I'm
investors look at this type of property.
simply relying on your report, sir.
All right, is the evidence done?
I have one more
One
question.
more thing?
Mr. McLaughlin, if you did apply a 10% vacancy rate in your fee simple analysis, what do you get for a value of that parcel?
For that parcel, it would have been roughly 11.3 million.
Which is...
I would also like to state, if I were to apply a 10% vacancy rate, I would not be using an 8.5% cap rate. A buyer, if they were going to, only use 10%, they would elevate that cap rate to something higher, something north of 10%.
That would divide the value by that number, which would decrease the overall, was what your argument is. The 8% something divided by 8% is gonna be more than something divided by 10%, and you're saying it's gonna go up. So even if the value goes up, the cap rate you're talking, dividing it by, it's gonna reach some number, right? I mean, I got
Some
the-
number lower than that.
I got the idea right. All right, anything else either side wants to do?
But if I understand it, if you have 100% occupancy, that would be better than having a 35% vacancy rate, which is a 65% occupancy. So therefore, the value of the property would be higher for sure, but then the cap rate would probably be lower, than it wouldn't go down.
Okay. Anything else? Anybody wants, now, listen, here's what I want to do. Does anybody else want to present any more evidence? Mr. Small,
We're good.
you good? Seaver, do you want anything else?
1 minute closing.
No,
With
here's
Mr.
here's
Chen.
what I want to do. Listen, this board has to consider their evidence. They've referenced a case that we should all read. They've referenced a report from a guy back in 2012 that you should see. It's not in the record. And you've referenced stuff that Mr. Gardner was asked for, and you need to resolve whether you need that and want to present that. So here's what I'm going to suggest. It's 9:30. You're from Lewiston, Auburn area. You're from Bangor. I would like written arguments, 5 pages or less, on the issues, okay? And I want the analysis on the case, because I think that's crucial. I've read the case years ago, and
We don't disagree on the case.
okay, but
We don't.
but I also want this 35 versus 10% discussed, the 10% versus 8.5 cap rate discussed in simple terms. He's a builder. I have no idea what he did. He's an educator. He's a surveyor. He's good with numbers, and I'm a lawyer. Write it so we understand. You guys are appraisers, right? And I understand there are 4 or 5 separate methods to use. And I want to know, see, Larry has raised the issue, they came in here and they used one rate and then they changed it with F. Please make it clear which methods you're using and what your final numbers are, please. 5 pages or less, and then respond to each other. Is 2 weeks enough?
Oh, God, yeah.
Is 2 weeks enough?
2 weeks for the
Your
initial brief?
submissions together. You submit your argument, you submit your argument, and then a week to respond to each other.
So 1 week for each brief? Or 2 weeks for the
I
first?
want 2 weeks for the first one. I need your positions, and I need to read that case. I think it's important that we read the case instead of make that decision tonight. And then a week after that, respond. And if you need more time, call each other up and say, I need more time, and agree to it.
Right.
I mean, this isn't, and then I'd like to meet in a month.
But we would, obviously, if we reach those agreements, we'll notify you of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
listen, I'd like to reschedule this for 1 month. And then you make your arguments, we'll have your positions, and we rule from here. If you'd like to make us propose findings of fact from each side, we'd love those too. Makes my job right. Look, this has importance to the city for a lot of money. It has importance to a landowner for a lot of money. I mean, and I don't want to make this decision on the fly at 9:30, that after we've heard some really opposing viewpoints and values. So I want to do it right. Does everyone agree with that approach?
I would just ask, can we stipulate that if, I don't know what Mr. Gardner may or may not have for documents to provide to me, but if he does, and I deem it appropriate, I can use them in the briefing?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Or if you want, when we come back in a month, if you want to question him and open the evidence, I don't care if we do that. Fair is fair. If there's information out there that Larry has, look, Larry's a busy man.
I know.
And he does his best, and we don't have to pick on him very often. But when we get a chance to, we will. Is everyone agreed that this is an approach we can do? Thank you. All right, I'm going to move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? And can you have Lori let us know in a month's time? Contact both parties. We can do them anytime, Monday. I know your schedules are not with you tonight, but
Okay.
let us know. We'll be
We'll
there.
coordinate through Lori.
Please. Thank you. You're done.